Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen, amen. Namaste.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister.
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, I seek your leave in accordance with Standing Order 122.1 to move a motion for the suspension of Standing Order 82 in relation to the calculating of time for statutory instruments, where the prescribed period falls within the period of the parliamentary budgetary process, October 2nd to 25th, 2023.
Honourable members, leave is granted. Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House suspend Standing Order 82 in relation to the calculating of time for statutory instruments, where the prescribed period falls within the period of the parliamentary budgetary process, October 2nd to 25th, 2023.
Honourable members, the question is that this House suspend Standing Order 82 in relation to the calculating of time for statutory instruments, where the prescribed period falls within the period of the parliamentary budgetary process, October 2nd to 25th, 2023. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The calculating of time for statutory instruments, where the prescribed period falls within the period of the parliamentary budgetary process, October 2nd to 25th, 2023, is hereby suspended.
Public business, government business, bills, second reading.
Honourable members, the debate on the second reading of the following bill, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Wednesday, October 11th, 2023, will be resumed. A bill entitled, An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September, 2024. The members who have already contributed to this debate are the Minister of Finance, the Leader of the Opposition, Minister of Youth Development and National Service, Member for Caroni Central, Member for Toko Sandy Grande, Member for Kamutu Manzanilla, Member for Laventille East Mova, Member for Moruga Tableland, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Member for Pointe-à-Pierre, Minister of National Security, Member for Naparima, Minister of Health, Member for Faizabad, Member for Tanapuna, Member for Caroni East, Minister of Labour, Member for Couva North, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Member for Orpuch West, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, Member for St. Augustine, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Member for Chaguanas East, Member for Tobago West, Member for Couva South, Minister of Trade and Industry, Member for Miaro, Minister in the Ministry of Education, Member for Tabaquite, Member for Port of Spain South, Member for Chaguanas West, Member for Point Forte, Minister of Public Utilities, Member for Princess Town, Minister of Works and Transport, Member for Orpuch East, Minister of Education, Minister of Digital Transformation, Member for Barataria San Juan, Minister of Planning and Development. Member for Tobago East.
Thank you for recognizing me, Madam Speaker, and giving me the opportunity to lend my voice to this very important debate. Madam Speaker, permit me to begin by acknowledging the goodness of God and expressing my gratitude for the love and support of my family, friends, supporters, and constituents, without which I will not have been able to serve with humility, dignity, integrity, passion, and unwavering dedication to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Before I speak to the portfolio I've been assigned as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, I will quickly touch on the constituency of Tobago East. After all, it is by virtue of the great institution called the People's National Movement and the goodwill of the people of Tobago East that I have the ability to serve in this capacity. Madam Speaker, my team and I have attempted to remain in constant contact with constituents. And let me thank my team for their commitment to service. We have been diligent in our walkabouts, roving office days, and distribution of support to constituents. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, recently there was a voice note circulating in Tobago where a non-supporter was berating me. In the voice note, the constituent was complaining that, and I will quote, she only walking up and down the place. She only dare walk up and down the place like Big Bird. Madam Speaker, if I found the time to walk and ask people for their votes, now that I'm in office, it is my duty to stay on the ground. It is my duty to find the time to walk and interact with my constituents, to hear and see firsthand their concerns. Yes, I have offices that are strategically located, but not every constituent has the ability to come and see me at my offices. So, Madam Speaker, I will meet them where they are. My field officers would continue to meet constituents where they are. Madam Speaker, if after 8 years of service, her issue is that I'm walking and interacting with my constituents too much, then I could hold my head up high and puff up my chest. Madam Speaker, the families and communities within my constituency have benefited from significant investment in social programs and physical infrastructure development over the last 8 years, particularly during the period 2016 to 2021, and we are indeed thankful. I, like my colleague, the MP for Tobago West, often boast that the people of Tobago are very fortunate in that we get 2 bites of the cherry. We enjoy the perks derived from central government projects and programs made available to citizens, while also directly benefiting from the resources allocated to the Tobago House of Assembly for the administration of Tobago's affairs. Many of my constituents have been able to access support through programs delivered through central government as well as the Tobago House of Assembly. Madam Speaker, my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Tobago West, would have succinctly outlined the state of affairs in Tobago and how the fiscal measures outlined by the Honourable Minister of Finance will benefit the people of Tobago. So I will not rehash. However, permit me to express my appreciation on behalf of my constituents who would have benefited from the many initiatives executed in Tobago under the central government and state agencies. Tobago East has experienced unprecedented development under the loving, stable hands of the People's National Movement. Every PNM minister, from Dr. Eric Williams, Mr. George Chambers, Mr. Patrick Manning, and now Dr. Keith Rowley, ensured that Tobago was not excluded from the national development agenda. The only prime minister, other than a PNM prime minister, to demonstrate genuine care, concern, and compassion for Tobago was former Prime Minister A.N.R. Robinson. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank again the Honourable Prime Minister for ensuring that Tobago East is not left out of the national development agenda. Madam Speaker, if a PNM government working alongside a PNM Executive Council did not have the political will to answer the passionate cry from the people of Tobago East, the current THA would not have the facility or means to successfully implement a program for cataract screening and removal. Hundreds of Tobagonians and even Trinidadians have traveled to the Roxborough Hospital for cataract screening or surgery. Madam Speaker, the 31,320 square foot hospital on Bloody Bear Road in Roxborough, Tobago was completed at a cost of $98,379,410.04 VAT inclusive. And the staff have been serving the people of Tobago East and the people of Tobago diligently. Madam Speaker, I, along with my constituents, eagerly anticipate the full operationalization of the hospital and the day we will be able to access 24/7 healthcare services. Madam Speaker, again, putting the health and well-being of the people of Tobago East high on the agenda, the former PNM administration in Tobago, in collaboration with central government, ensured that funding was made available for the construction of a health center in Moriah. The construction of the Moriah Health Center came in at a cost of approximately $27 million. Madam Speaker, I believe that Tobago, at this time, has the highest number of healthcare facilities per capita in the Western Hemisphere. If I'm not mistaken, Madam Speaker, Tobagonians can also boast of having the highest number of community centers per capita in the Western Hemisphere. During the period that the PNM held the reins of the Assembly, a number of community centers were constructed and renovated across Tobago. This was done in keeping with the PNM's philosophy of delivering facilities to advance human capital development. Madam Speaker, I recall a former commissioner of police attempting to close the Moriah police station. This nonsensical plan was conceptualized without consultation with stakeholders or even officers in the district. I had to reach out to the then Minister of National Security and ask him to intervene. Madam Speaker, if you know the Tobago geography, you will understand how important the Moriah police station is for ensuring safety and security, particularly in communities such as Golden Lane in Tobago West, Bloody Bay and Mason Knoll in Tobago East, to name a few. Thankfully, Madam Speaker, that plan was shelved, and the Moriah police station continues to stand as a symbol of safety and security for the people within its jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, the Roxborough police station and fire station were built under the PNM administration, and high-speed interceptors were acquired for use by the Tobago Coast Guard base. Madam Speaker, this was done in response to a call for greater monitoring of the island's coastline and borders, as fisherfolk in Tobago East were reporting an increase in piracy and illicit activities on the waters around the island. Madam Speaker, we remain thankful for this investment. Madam Speaker, with the allocation received by the central government, the former THA administration was able to execute an intensive infrastructure development program. The PNM administration was putting money in the homes of Tobagonians by engaging Tobago contractors, whom in turn were able to provide employment opportunities and drive the construction sector in Tobago. Madam Speaker, agricultural access roads were developed across the island. Retaining walls were constructed, and extensive drainage works, road rehabilitation, and road paving was done. Madam Speaker, Tobago was in a growth trajectory that the PNM central government fully supported. Recently, I attended a function, Madam Speaker, and I overheard a gentleman complaining that it was the first time he has seen so many potholes in Tobago. Imagine that. Madam Speaker, look where Tobago reached. Unfortunately, many Tobagonians are experiencing buyer's remorse, but are afraid to publicly speak out because of fear of victimization. Madam Speaker, many Tobagonians are experiencing buyer's remorse the same way they experienced buyer's remorse between 2010 to 2015. Madam Speaker, we have a saying in Tobago, "Tom drunk, but Tom no fool." During my many walkabouts, Tobagonians would often pull me aside and reassure me that we big and we have sense. During my many interactions with fellow Tobagonians, they would remind me that they already experienced a Tobago under a United Nations central government, and they have no intention of making that mistake again. Madam Speaker, on my many walkabouts, Tobagonians tell me they know that a vote for any party besides the PNM at a general election is a vote for the UNC. Madam Speaker, Tobagonians tell me they cannot risk the future of our nation by betting on a UNC ticket again. On my many walkabouts, Madam Speaker, Tobagonians tell me they remember the period of disrespect to the Tobago House of Assembly under a UNC central government. Tobagonians tell me, Madam Speaker, they remember being cut off from accessing self-help and other central government grants. Madam Speaker, Tobagonians tell me they remember all the UNC MPs who as recently as 2020 said Tobago was receiving too big a slice of the national pie. Madam Speaker, on my many walkabouts, Tobagonians tell me the axe forgets what the tree remembers. Madam Speaker, Tobagonians will never forget the way we were treated by a UNC government headed by Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bestessa, the member for Siparia. Madam Speaker, I wish to commend the staff at WASA and Tiantec for always responding to the needs of the people of Tobago East. We have seen notable improvement in the supply of water and experienced fewer power outages. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, I receive fewer complaints from constituents who have suffered loss of appliances or damage to appliances because of issues such as low voltage or power surges. Additionally, a number of constituents would have received assistance through the Ministry of Public Utilities Residential Electrification Assistance Program. In fact, approximately $180,000 would have been spent on the REAP in Tobago during the previous fiscal year. Madam Speaker, access to potable water is a fundamental human right. WASA has been doing commendable work to ensure that the constituents of Tobago East benefit from an improved supply of potable water. Due to the construction and installation of the French Fort boosters during the previous fiscal year, 120 residents of Upper French Fort now have access to potable water 24 hours a day, 3 days a week for the first time. Madam Speaker, the installation of a 450-meter, 100-millimeter PVC pipeline has resulted in an improved water supply for 60 residents along the Mason Hall-Lakoto Road, as the level of service has been increased to 24 hours per day, 5 days per week. I am pleased to report that the construction and outfitting of the Hope Trace booster will result in a change in service level for 120 residents of Hope Trace and Upper Bleming, from 24 hours a day, 1 day per week, to 24 hours a day, 5 days per week. Madam Speaker, these are just a few of the projects undertaken by WASA in the constituency during the previous fiscal year. On behalf of my constituents, I extend sincere gratitude to the Minister of Public Utilities. Madam Speaker, Tobago East is well poised to advance food security on the island, and I'm grateful to the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries for providing agro-incentive grants to farmers and agro-processors in my constituency. The long-term effects of this assistance to farmers will benefit all Tobagonians by promoting food security and economic diversification. Madam Speaker, while I boast that Tobago benefits from 2 bites of the cherry, I must acknowledge how difficult it is to be serving constituents with an executive council that is largely unwilling to cooperate with the elected members of Parliament for Tobago East and Tobago West, despite the fact we have all been elected to serve the people of Tobago. Some secretaries refuse to acknowledge any queries or correspondence coming out of my constituency office. I can count on one hand, Madam Speaker, the number of secretaries who respond to my calls or letters, and I will still have fingers remaining. Madam Speaker, that is not right. Madam Speaker, whenever I send correspondence on the MP for Tobago East letterhead, I am not writing on my own behalf. I am advocating for my constituents. I am writing on behalf of fellow Tobagonians. I'm writing on behalf of members of their electoral districts. Madam Speaker, the least they could do is just mammogram me with a response. Madam Speaker, I listened keenly to the Leader of the Opposition's response as well as the contribution of members opposite. Madam Speaker, we cannot please all of the people all of the time. And it is expected that some people and some sectors will be disappointed. But by and large, Madam Speaker, the budget has ignited hope in the vast majority of Trimbagonians. So I wish to commend the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Planning and Development and their respective teams for delivering a budget that inspires hope. Madam Speaker, while delivering an address in Washington, D.C. in February 1968, a mere 2 months before his assassination, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expressed the following, and I quote, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope," end of quote. I sincerely hold the view, Madam Speaker, that many of the fiscal measures outlined in the Minister of Finance's presentation instill hope in the citizenry, hope for a brighter future, especially for society's most vulnerable. So, Madam Speaker, while we acknowledge the feelings of those who wanted more, while we acknowledge the sentiments of those who wanted something different, we look to the future with hope. Madam Speaker, the majority of Trimbagonians are optimistic about the future because this budget has continued to propel Trinidad and Tobago towards social and economic stability. Madam Speaker, permit me to quote a short excerpt from the executive summary of the Ernst & Young publication focused on Trinidad and Tobago Budget 2024. Madam Speaker, while noting that Trinidad and Tobago has witnessed a decline in key economic indicators and the attendant challenges that would have emerged, the Ernst & Young publication highlighted, and I quote, "Our macroeconomic indicators remain relatively strong when compared to our Caribbean peers. Our GDP per capita, debt to GDP ratio, Heritage and Stabilization Fund, import cover, and employment figures are commendable. Trinidad and Tobago has enviable economic buffers, and it is not in an economic crisis, but we must be vigilant, as the crisis could loom in the future if we fail to rapidly adapt to the changing landscape. By acting now, we can foster hope and positivity for a brighter future," end of quote. Madam Speaker, as I note the caution in the Ernst & Young commentary, I do so with a deep sense of satisfaction that this government, this PNM administration, has demonstrated and continues to demonstrate the highest levels of competence to manage the affairs of this country, allowing us to continue on a path of development that is in the best interest of all citizens. Madam Speaker, through astute leadership and prudent fiscal management, this government has been able to successfully navigate many challenges over the years to ensure that citizens can enjoy a decent standard of living. And I wish to assure the citizens that this government will continue to work for every citizen of our beloved country. This is a solemn promise of my government, Madam Speaker, a government for the people. Madam Speaker, if my colleagues opposite paid attention to the contents of the Minister of Finance's budget for this year, they would notice that the budget is geared towards promoting resilience in our people, an ideal that is certain to prepare all to be able to achieve their aspirations while also preparing them to withstand the multiple waves of economic turmoil and social distress that are sometimes unavoidable despite our best efforts. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister has entrusted me with key operational portfolios within the Office of the Prime Minister, including the Central Administrative Services Tobago, CAST, Gender and Child Affairs, and the National Response to HIV and AIDS. These portfolios play a vital role in supporting the national development goals outlined in the National Development Strategy, Vision 2030. My initial appointment in 2015 was the Central Administrative Services Tobago, CAST. Consequently, I will address that aspect of the portfolio first. Madam Speaker, the Central Administrative Services Tobago serves Tobago under three main categories: the Meteorological Services Division, the Registrar's General Office, and General Administrative Services, which includes the Sub-Treasury, the Weights and Measures Inspectorate, and General Services, amongst others. Madam Speaker, the Central Administrative Services Tobago is a department under the Office of the Prime Minister. The department plays a critical role in Tobago, ensuring that essential administrative, legal, and meteorological services are available on the island, and is responsible for supporting all central government agencies in Tobago. An initiative coming out of CAST that I'm particularly proud of is our student internship program. The Office of the Prime Minister CAST Student Internship Program was developed to aid young people in developing their knowledge, skills, and abilities for the world of work. The program is aimed at providing a short-term supervised work experience that is usually related to a student's specific field of study or career aspirations. The mandate is fostering a new generation of skilled and motivated individuals. To date, the program has engaged over 128 students in a wide range of areas, including accounting, HR, corporate communications, and information and communication technology. In the last fiscal period, we were able to facilitate 20 students. And Madam Speaker, just as a joke and as an aside, there is no line item for this. Every year, I bother my permanent secretaries and the team to make sure we find the money to host this program, because I understand the value to Tobago's young people. Madam Speaker, another area of note is the work of the Financial Assistance to Non-Profit Organization Committee. The committee was constituted to deliberate on applications for financial assistance from individuals and organizations and make recommendations to the Permanent Secretary on those that meet the criteria set out by CAST. The committee is guided by the Financial Assistance to Non-Profit Organization Policy Framework. Cabinet approval of a policy for the disbursement of grants and funds to non-profit organizations at CAST was granted in March of 2017. The said policy provides guidance for interaction with NGOs, CBOs, and FBOs, and managing requests for funding. To date, the committee has awarded over $1,099,166 in grants to more than 122 non-profit organizations in Tobago. The grants have been used to assist NGOs, CBOs, and faith-based organizations operating in a wide range of areas, including sport, arts and culture, education, agriculture, to name a few. Madam Speaker, as a child growing up in Roxborough, one of the activities I eagerly anticipated was the Republic Day Route March. I anticipated seeing my uncle, who was then a serving member of the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, proudly marching through his hometown in his well-ironed khakis. And I anticipated cheering for my cousin Bravo and his friend Polly as they marched with the cadet contingent. Madam Speaker, for some reason, the hosting of the route march was discontinued. And I remember, even as a young lady, making a promise to myself that once I'm in a position of influence, I will work to bring back the activity to the people of Tobago East. Madam Speaker, with the exception of the period of the COVID-19 lockdown, the Republic Day Route March has been an annual event since 2017. The Route March engenders a feeling of patriotism amongst various groups and communities, especially in the east of Tobago, where it is greatly anticipated by members of the public. Madam Speaker, I'm sincerely thankful for the team at CAST and all stakeholders who would have ensured the success of the route march. Madam Speaker, every year, the team at CAST, the Planning Committee, which comprises members from the Ministry of National Security, the Tobago House of Assembly, and stakeholders across Tobago, every year, they endeavor to make the route march bigger and better. Every year they endeavor to ensure that the children of Tobago East can have a reason to smile on Republic Day, as they too benefit from other children, as other children who would experience a parade on Independence Day in Scarborough. Madam Speaker, this year we had over 500 individuals from armed and unarmed detachments participating in the route march, and the feedback from the public has been positive. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Mounted Branch for bringing the horses to Tobago. I want to thank the police for bringing the K9 unit to Tobago. Madam Speaker, I want to thank mission riders. I want to thank the pathfinders. I want to thank cadets, Girls, Guides, Scouts. Madam Speaker, I want to thank every unit under Ministry of National Security. Madam Speaker, I danced for so when prison ban passed through. I am indeed grateful. Madam Speaker, CAST has been leading in terms of embracing government's agenda around digitization and digitalization. CAST is actively digitizing its systems to enhance service delivery and efficiency across its divisions. This includes the 2021 launch of the CAST intranet and website to facilitate improved communication, collaboration, and access to information. Madam Speaker, CAST's digitalization drive also includes substantial investments in ICT infrastructure to boost productivity, improve relationships with citizens and stakeholders, and deliver better outcomes within the organization. In 2019, CAST invested $550,000 in a file tracking system to assist the registry in locating physical files within the General Administration building. Furthermore, CAST networked the District Registrar's Office in Roxborough, Tobago. Madam Speaker, the newly installed ICT infrastructure plays a critical role in ensuring that the Registrar General's Office services at the Registrar General's Office are accessible to the public, particularly those residing in eastern communities of Tobago, who previously had to travel to Scarborough for these services. Madam Speaker, in 2022, CAST allocated $998,500 for implementing an enterprise content management system aimed at digitizing physical files and workflow processes. This ongoing project will transform the organization's public services. Madam Speaker, CAST also established a conferencing and training center at the General Administration building with an investment of $490,000. This project prioritized state-of-the-art equipment and applications, facilitating webinars and training sessions for up to 20 staff members with the flexibility of breakout groups for a more targeted experience. Madam Speaker, in the last fiscal period, Team CAST utilized this technology to host a number of in-house seminars and training sessions. Madam Speaker, under the former Ministry of Tobago Development, the construction of the new Met Services building for Tobago commenced. The building was completed and commissioned during our first term in office under the leadership of Dr. Keith Rowley. Since then, Team CAST has placed emphasis on acquiring new technology and equipment. thus ensuring that the Tobago Met Services Division is able to contribute to the overall improvement of meteorological services available to Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. Our investment in the state-of-the-art technology includes 6 towers for the low-level wind shear alert system, which were installed across Tobago. The low-level wind shear alert system provides critical meteorological data which can be relayed directly to the cockpit of an aircraft. Madam Speaker, the Meteorological Services Division is also continuing the installation of automatic weather stations across Tobago. The automatic weather stations provide measurements of meteorological elements needed for safe operations at the A.N.R. Robinson International Airport, including but not limited to approach, landing, and takeoff. Thus far, automatic weather stations have been installed at the A.N.R. Robinson International Airport in Crown Point, Buku, Charlottesville, the Dwight York Stadium, Mainridge, and Goodwood. The Meteorological Services Division also installed a geostationary operational environmental satellite, ground station satellite dish to effectively monitor climate patterns, and a Ranger X5J9868 dual polar radar was installed and commissioned in May 2022. This radar allows for improvements in locating and predicting the path and intensity of precipitation. Madam Speaker, the automatic weather stations and radar were in the testing stage for most of the last fiscal period. However, data for both became available for use from early July 2023. In the last fiscal period, we continued to upgrade the TT Med Office mobile app, ensuring that we fixed bugs within the system. The upgrade has significantly enhanced the early warning capabilities of the Meteorological Services Division by making adverse weather alerts and other updates more accessible to the public while on the go. The app is available for both Apple and Android devices, and I want to take this opportunity to encourage all citizens, not just Tobagonians, to utilize the app. Madam Speaker, I now turn my attention to the last unit under the CAST, the Registrar General's Office. Today, as I speak to some of the achievements under this unit of CAST, I do so with a heavy heart as I reflect on a situation that is brewing in Tobago. Madam Speaker, there's a popular African proverb that I'm often forced to refer to when I reflect on the nuances surrounding the delivery of service to the public, especially the Tobago public. Madam Speaker, when elephants dance, it is the grass that suffers. Let me repeat that. When elephants dance, it is the grass that suffers. Madam Speaker, this African proverb cautions us that it is the weak that get hurt in conflicts between the powerful. In other words, Madam Speaker, when bigwigs in Bacchanal, is the grassroots people who suffer. Madam Speaker, I simply wish to convey to the people of Tobago that I am aware of the current difficulties at the Registrar General Office in Tobago, and assure Tobagonians that I am doing everything in my power to ensure that the underlying issues are resolved so that Tobagonians are not disenfranchised. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the current circumstances, the Registrar General Office Tobago is ensuring that we expand services and the access to services so that we have a wider reach on the island. With the opening of the District Registration Office at the Roxborough Administrative Complex, we have facilitated easier registration of births and deaths for residents from Goodwood to Charlottesville, including the villages of Lansome and Bloody Bay. Madam Speaker, in 2023, we were able to implement the company's registry online system in Tobago. This system facilitates electronic submission of documents to the registry. It is intended to provide ease of use to members of the public and streamline the processing of documents by the office. Once registered on the system, users are able to access a range of online services, including name search or name reservation, public record search, registration of business names, incorporation of companies, registration of external companies, registration of non-profit organizations, filing of annual returns, filing of change of directors, filing of change of address, and filing of notice of secretary, change of secretary. Madam Speaker, again, I want to caution those at play and remind us that whenever elephants dance, it is the grass that suffers. Whenever elephants dance, it is the grass that suffers. So I just want to remind those who have the ability to end an administrative tit-for-tat, let's end it, because we have people in Tobago East waiting to register births and waiting to register deaths. Madam Speaker, we have to put people first in service at all times. Madam Speaker, I wish to now report on the Child Affairs Division. Madam Speaker, as we in the Gender and Child Affairs Division of the Office of the Prime Minister, alongside other government ministries, strive to enhance the quality of life of our citizens, we must acknowledge the unfortunate reality of violent acts occurring within our communities. These acts are perpetrated against innocent citizens in their homes, on the nation's streets, shopping centers, and elsewhere. Today, I make yet another appeal to all citizens to come together to reduce the incidence of violence in the nation. Let us play an even greater role in helping others to value life and value living. Let us watch out for our children. Let us, as parents and guardians, train our children to respect themselves and to respect each other. Let us inculcate in our children the need to be courteous and respectful. Let us cultivate a culture of zero tolerance for crime and violence, particularly towards our nation's young. This government remains resolute in its commitment to creating a safer society for the nation's children, now and in the future. And I'm going to repeat that, Madam Speaker. This PNM government remains resolute in its commitment to creating a safer society for the nation's children, now and in the future. Madam Speaker, the overall child protection system received a tremendous boost at the beginning of the last fiscal period with the commencement of the meetings by the Standing Committee on Child Protection. The committee comprised key ministers and their deputy permanent secretaries, the chief administrator of the Tobago House of Assembly and other administrators of the Tobago House of Assembly, and other strategic stakeholders such as the judiciary. Madam Speaker, this committee was able to make significant strides in advancing crucial work for children and the child care and protection system. Over the period 2016 to 2023, this government invested roughly $500 million in the provision of services for children who are in community residences across the country. And we will continue to support community residences and children's homes through our ongoing provision of subventions and the payment per child system. Madam Speaker, in the last fiscal period, the division provided support to 582 children. The investment in this area was approximately $54,683,568. Madam Speaker, with the support of UNICEF, we are currently conducting a thorough review of the payment per child system to ensure that it accurately reflects the reality of providing for a child in the care of the state. This will enable us to better meet the needs of children in our care. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding this commitment, in fiscal 2024, the division, through the Standing Committee, will aggressively push forward with our de-institutionalization efforts. It is our intention to ensure that children are well cared for in their families, and where this is not possible, alternative family options like adoption, foster, and kinship care will be rigorously pursued. And let me be clear, Madam Speaker, it is not our intention to just close down homes willy-nilly. Madam Speaker, we will be revisiting the arrangements at some of the existing children's homes to ensure that smaller familial type settings are established and adhered to at all times. This is in keeping with the best interests of the child philosophy that guides our work at the Office of the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, through the work of the Standing Committee, I was able to witness firsthand the benefits of an all-of-government, all-of-society approach to child care and protection. Madam Speaker, earlier this year, the government worked closely with children's homes to ensure their compliance with the necessary standards for licensing and operation. I consider this to be one of the most significant achievements over the past year. While some homes initially faced challenges in meeting the licensing deadline, we persevered, Madam Speaker. We persevered amidst widespread criticism and negative commentary from detractors, remaining resolute in our commitment to enhancing all homes for the well-being of the children who reside within them. We put the interests of the children first and made sure they were not displaced, again, demonstrating our commitment to operating on the best interests of the child principle. Madam Speaker, the government has fulfilled its role in this particular area and has responded to the trust of the nation's children to always keep their best interests as paramount. Madam Speaker, we in the government remain committed to the development of a robust, integrated, proactive, and responsive child care and protection system within our nation. Madam Speaker, in October 2022, we launched a National Children's Registry. Since then, over 90% of MOUs have been signed with central government agencies to share data. And data is being uploaded in both Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, in the last fiscal period, almost all of the data for children in Tobago was uploaded. Madam Speaker, I thank the THA for the willingness to collaborate on this very important exercise that benefits the nation's children. Madam Speaker, since the launch of the NCR, it has recorded in excess of 140,000 data points from children in several sectors, including education, health, youth protective, and social services. To remind the public, Madam Speaker, the NCR is a digital monitoring system that seeks to ensure that every child achieves their developmental milestones. The NCR will serve as an early warning system for children who may be at risk and is in urgent need of care and protection. Madam Speaker, we are in the final stages of the child poverty analysis, which is being done in collaboration with UNICEF. We are all aware children have specific nutritional, health, education, and other needs which are different from those of adults. As such, we have embarked on the child poverty analysis as the resulting data and information will allow for the design of policies to eliminate child poverty and monitor the impact of the implementation of these policies. Madam Speaker, every April, we heighten our public education and sensitization efforts around child abuse. A collaborative approach was taken by the Children's Authority and the Gender and Child Affairs Division in 2023. Apart from targeted campaigns in traditional and non-traditional media, school tours were conducted at both primary and secondary schools in Trinidad and Tobago. Sensitization sessions were also conducted with parliamentary representatives and the National Parent Teachers Association. Mr. Deputy Speaker, an outreach activity at Citygate saw us engaging over 1,000 persons. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the more we inform and sensitize the public, the better chances we have of reducing and eliminating child abuse in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member, again, your initial speaking time has elapsed. You have an additional 10 minutes. You care to avail yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I get 15?
Proceed. No, 10.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have so much more to report in terms of the Child Affairs Division, but allow me to just refer to some of the things done at the Children's Authority. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the National Interagency Child Abuse Protocol was finalized in the fiscal year. The protocol was published in May 2023 and provides a guide for how abused or maltreated children should receive treatment from or interact with various child protection service agencies in the country. The protocol, once embraced and fully implemented by all stakeholders, will ensure that there is better service delivery for abused children. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm going to quickly skip over to Gender Affairs Division in the interest of time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the key initiatives coming out of the Gender Affairs Division is the National Strategic Action Plan to End Gender-Based Violence and Sexual Violence. And I want to thank the Cabinet for approving this initiative. Mr. Deputy Speaker, at the recent ceremonial opening of the 2023-2024 law term, the Chief Justice indicated that there were 9,051 new filings, of which 3,173 were domestic violence, 2,992 were divorces, and 1,766 were maintenance. The previous year's filings were in the range of 5,500 per year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I must admit that as a country, we can do better and we must do better. Mr. Deputy Speaker, whenever I read about an incident of abuse or death as a result of domestic violence, I always reflect on the fact that these outcomes are preventable. It is only after these unfortunate incidents you hear the story of all who are aware that something was going on. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in a recent article which dealt with the death of a child, I noted that several persons in the community were very much aware of what was taking place, yet no one spoke out. No one sought to involve the relevant authorities until it was too late. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if we are to reduce or even end violence in our society, if we wish to improve the circumstances of our society's most vulnerable, we must adopt an all-of-society approach. Curbing this disturbing trend of violence can never be the responsibility of the government alone. We need all hands on deck. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is not a them issue or we issue. It is about all are we. We have a responsibility to be duty bearers. We are the first line of response in the communities. Why wait until someone becomes a statistic to then say where you know and where you hear and where you suspect? As they say, if you know something, say something. If you see something, say something. Mr. Deputy Speaker, at the Gender and Child Affairs Division, our call to action in 2023 has been, be a hero, help get gender-based violence to zero. Today, I call on all citizens to be a hero. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in keeping with the United Nations Resolution 1325 on Women, Peace and Security, Cabinet in April 2023 agreed to the membership of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in the Women, Peace and Security Focal Points Network. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago also attended the 5th capital level meeting on women, peace and security from the 6th to the 8th of June in Washington, D.C. Mr. Deputy Speaker, women, peace and security is a policy framework that recognizes that women must be critical actors in all efforts to achieve sustainable international peace and security. The WPS agenda promotes a gendered perspective on women's equal and meaningful participation in peace processes, peace building, and security. While in the initial application of this concept, it was predominantly used in regions of armed conflict, more and more we are seeing where it has been expanded to encompass domestic concerns, including crime and climate change. The government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, through the Gender Affairs Division, in collaboration with the High Commission of Canada and UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean, collaborated to host a national workshop towards the implementation of women, peace, and security on Wednesday, 21st June at the Hilton. A note has already been prepared to seek the approval of Cabinet to complete the first Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan. The first action plan is expected to address guns and gang violence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the division will work closely with the Ministry of National Security to implement the pilot projects in selected communities across Trinidad. As the Ministry of National Security is one of our key implementing partners for women, peace and security. Mr. Deputy Speaker, another initiative under gender affairs that I must mention before my time elapses is the financial support to women who are survivors of DV. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we introduced the Survivors Transformation and Empowerment Program. We did this because a 2021 survey of women who were accommodated at the National Domestic Violence Shelter revealed that 95% of them were financially dependent on their abuser prior to entering the shelter. Although only 5% of their clients returned to their former abuser, 84% of them ended up in another DV shelter. Further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 95% of the clients required and received government grants due to their financial status. It is for this reason, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Cabinet in June 2023 approved the STEP, Survivors Transformation and Empowerment Program. STEP aims to improve the financial independence among survivors of domestic violence and reduce the likelihood of survivors of domestic violence to remain in or return to abusive relationships. Mr. Deputy Speaker, another initiative we undertook at the shelter was the commencement of the agricultural training program. This was done to help to ensure food security of our clients when they exit the shelters and to ensure that they have the ability to benefit from opportunities made available under the Ministry of Agriculture. Another key initiative coming out from the Gender Affairs Division was the virtual bilateral meeting and workshop between Ukraine and the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The virtual workshop was held on June 13, and this came out of a meeting.
You have 2 minutes.
This came out of a meeting I had with the Minister for Gender from Ukraine. We made a commitment to see how we could share our experiences and learn from best practices applied in each country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't have the time to address the National AIDS Coordinating Committee at the moment. However, in closing, I want to just speak to the people a bit. We acknowledge there's much work ahead, and we are actively devising strategies to attain our set goals and objectives. In the coming year, we must expect to initiate additional programs to protect our nation's most vulnerable. We urge all stakeholders, including members of the general public, to accept that they have key roles to play in this regard. Let us unite to enhance the well-being of our vulnerable populations and pledge to create a brighter future as we progress towards 2024 and a better Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, most importantly, I urge all of us not to lose hope in our potential as a people, not to lose hope in our potential as a nation, not to lose hope in our potential to achieve greatness and be great. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you.
I recognize the member for Aruka Maloney.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to contribute to the budget debate for this upcoming fiscal. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I start off by indicating that if this is not the worst opposition that we have ever seen, it is close to being the worst opposition that we have ever seen. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is clear that they had absolutely nothing, and I repeat, absolutely nothing to contribute to this debate. As is usual, they feel that by dropping so-called bombs or by saying things that they feel people want to hear, that they are doing something to us or doing something to our supporters. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, what they continue to do is have a little bit of truth in something and then a bucket load of untruths, half-truths, and innuendos. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we will have none of that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to deal frontally with one matter that was raised yesterday by the Member of Parliament for had a lot of questions to answer thereafter. We had the issue with the EMBD, we had the issue with the Carlston Field, we had issues with Eden Gardens, we had issues with Oasis. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we even have issues in finding these 7,000 houses that they say that they have built. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is even more amazing is that in a recent newspaper report, he said to us, the member for Oropouche East, as is reported, that he presented certain information as it relates to a valuation. One valuation was in or around $52 million. The other was for over $100 million. And he presented, when asked, well, why didn't you ask for a third? Because these seemed so different in terms of their numbers. He said that was not his responsibility. He presented it to the cabinet and it was up to the cabinet. Suddenly, it is not his responsibility as the Minister of Housing to present the best information to the cabinet. But yesterday, he, the member for Oropouche East, is calling for the resignation of the minister, the resignation of the board, the resignation of the managing director. None of this he ever found before. He even called for the resignation of the Prime Minister, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as it relates to a project in Terrestrial. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, as is usual, he came with incorrect information because he felt he had to drop a bomb. But it was a squid, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me put for the Hansard record and for the people of Trinidad and Tobago the facts on this particular matter. First of all, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this contract is a design, build, finance contract, which from the outset, given the type of contract, the HDC does not put out any money, not 1 cent. Design, build, finance. I know they're not accustomed.
Member for Naprima. Member for Naprima. Member for Naprima.
48
Member, I'm on my legs. Right? That's not a standing order to start with. No. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I know a design, build, finance contract would not suit that side because they like to see money. They like to see cash. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I could put the facts into the Hansard. In October 2019, the Tender Committee of the HDC agreed to the engagement of the contractor to provide a design, build, and finance service at the terrestrial site. On December 19, 2019, the board agreed in principle to the award of the contract and to do so using the FIDIC EPC Silver Book. In January 2020, the HDC entered into an agreement with the contractor to execute the performance of the works described as the design, build, finance services for the construction of townhouse blocks comprising 110 housing units at the Terrestrial Lands Dabadi housing development site. In October 2020, the contractor commenced these works. In November 2020, the HDC's executive management conducted a routine site visit to the site. Between the period July 2021 and September 2021, the HDC issued numerous notices to the contractor as follows. On July 23, 2021, July 26, 2021, July 29, 2021, July 30, 2021, and August 3, 2021, the HDC, through its Clerk of Works, issued site instruction work orders to notify the contractor of various breaches and to instruct the contractor to make good the works to ensure that there was compliance with the contract. By correspondence dated...
Again, hold on. Members, all right, I know we are coming down to the close of the debate, but please, I am not going to tolerate outbursts across the floor on both sides. Please, right? Everyone had the opportunity, and again, we are down to the last few. Please, members, proceed.
By correspondence dated July 22nd, July 26th, August 4th, August 9th, August 16th, and August 24th, 2021, the HDC issued various notices pursuant to subclause 15.1, which is the notice to correct, and pursuant to subclause 7.6, which is under the rubric remedial works, to correct in relation to structural issues identified. In September 2021, the HDC instructed the contractor pursuant to subclause of the contract to submit a revised program and supporting report describing the revised method that the contractor will use to expedite the progress and complete the works within a reasonable time. November 3rd, 2021, the contractor submitted its remedial retrofit methodology and design. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on January 5th, 2022, CEP Limited was engaged by the HDC, and I repeat that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. CEP Limited, which was the information that the member for Oropouche East quoted from, was engaged, but he did not say that it was engaged by the HDC. Tried to give the impression that the HDC was being negligent, was engaged by the HDC to conduct a condition assessment at 11 townhouse units, and they asked for 2 reports, assessment report and a design development report. February 22, CEP submitted its report. March 2022, the HDC gave notice to the contractor of the suspension of works. August 2022, CEP submitted a second report which provided methodologies for the remediation, September 2022, the HDC advised the contractor that CEP had completed its assessment and enclosed the report for the contractor's viewing. November 2022, the HDC issued notice to the contractor pursuant to FIDIC that failure to recommence works would result in the HDC having to terminate. In December 2022, the contractor submitted his remedial works methodology, and in January 2023, the HDC submitted their comments, and in February 2023, the HDC informed the contractor that inspections would be conducted on every unit on the site, and it was also agreed that the contractor would provide an update. In May 2023, the HDC obtained written advice from its external attorneys in relation to the termination of the contract. The advice was given to the HDC board and resulted in a decision to further engage the contractor. June 2023, the HDC met with the contractor to discuss the way forward and also to indicate that they were not happy that the contractor was taking so long to remediate. The matter was then presented to the HDC board in August and in September, and the HDC board decided as follows. 1, the board directed that management write to the contractor informing him that an assessment was conducted of all 110 units, and it was found that the structures were not fit for purpose. The CEP report was referenced. Consequently, the HDC is unable to take possession of the units. The contractor is required to produce units that are fit for purpose, and therefore he is required to bring the buildings to a standard that is fit for purpose. The board directed that the letter must state that the managing director and the engineer will delegate CEP to perform the work of the engineer. Additionally, the letter must be accompanied by a scope of works. The board directed the management to further inform the contractor that enhanced supervision would be required, and the board noted the advice of the external legal counsel. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the HDC has entered, therefore, into a situation where the contractor must remediate at his own cost. So this talk about that Oropuch East is saying that the taxpayers will have to pay millions and millions of dollars is totally fabricated and totally untrue. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, at that terrestrial site, we already have over 169 units that were properly built. They have been allocated. Citizens are living on that terrestrial site. But it is only because the HDC management, the then minister, the board went to visit the site. We recognized that something was wrong and immediately took action. So we took the right action at the time. And we are continuing to take the right action. And that would never happen under that government, under the PP government. In many instances, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they have been found wanting in relation to so many instances. We have a situation where they have, on more than one occasion, had sole selectors, my friend is for billions of dollars. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are interested in taking care of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We are not interested in filling our pockets or anything like that. We are interested in ensuring that anybody who works for the government of Trinidad and Tobago as a contractor does the work that they are supposed to do. And that is why I can stand here proudly and say that the HDC has acted honorably and that the member for Oropouche East, as usual, is trying to mislead the House and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, but we're not totally surprised at that. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you will recall that at a joint select committee, the member for Oropouche East, who is one of their members of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, we raised an objection to the member for Oropouche East sitting on that committee. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I may be allowed just to remind this House that the member was seen, when he was Minister of Housing, touring a police station with a gang leader. There was a photograph of him in the papers with him touring a police station with an alleged gang member or gang leader who was given the contract to build the police station. A gang member given a contract to build a police station. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me just remind this honorable House and those opposite who have very short memories of a July 4th, 2020 article in the Trinidad Express. And it's headed, "Cops Probe Munilal's Alleged Links to Gangs." Member of Parliament for Oropouche East, Dr. Rudal Munilal, and I'm quoting Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48.8, where the conduct of any member of the House should not be raised except on a substantive motion.
So I'll repeat. A Trinidad Express article by Denise Wren, dated July 4th, 2020, and it's headlined, "Cops Probe Munilal's Alleged Links to Gangs." Member of Parliament for Oropouche East, Dr. Rudal Munilal, remains under police investigation for allegedly being affiliated with members of the Rasta City Gang. The investigation came following an interception of communications last year, allegedly between a top member of Rasta City and Munilal, both of whom said to have planned to meet at the Hyatt Regency Trinidad Hotel on Ryson Road, Port of Spain. Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith was aware of the interception, the Sunday Express understands. However, on meeting day, a sting operation was organized and only 4 members of the gang arrived. Mr. Deputy Speaker,
48.8. The minister is going on and on and on about things that has nothing to do with his budget and reading newspaper articles.
Honourable members, this is not the first time that particular media houses have been quoted. The member has identified clearly a source. Kindly proceed. Members, I have ruled. Proceed.
Munilal, the issue of Munilal and his alleged gang affiliation came to the fore earlier this year during a joint select committee meeting. Munilal, it was said in presenting the case, it was said that the Joint Select Committee recommended that Munilal recuse himself from the inquiry on crime based on the evidence given by the Commissioner of Police and Minister of National Security, Stuart Young, and that he, Munilal, had been identified in intelligence reports in relation to certain gang members. The JSC report indicated members of the committee felt Munilal had a personal and direct interest in matters before it. Remember, this is the National Security JSC, of which the member for Oropuch East continues to be a member. Continues to be a member as recommended by the member for Superior.
And as a rule, she takes ownership. The member takes ownership for what she is quoting. That's all I want.
And again, honorable members, the member has so identified her particular source and kindly proceed. Overruled. Overruled.
You want to take ownership of it? Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Mafanapurima, I have ruled, and it's a standard procedure within this particular chamber. The member is on her legs, and she has identified her source, and she takes ownership for it. That's clear. That's clear. So, okay. So again, please.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is clear that we on this side are very concerned by some member who could be found in this way to apparently his affiliations are questionable, and that member wants to talk to us about criminality and about corruption and issues of that nature. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we on this side, we reject whatever is being said. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just wanted to move to one other issue as it relates to the member for Mayaro. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I keep saying that the members on the other side never come with the whole truth when they're discussing any matters. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you may recall that the member for Mayaro told us that he has made applications on behalf of sorry, Mr. Deputy Speaker. He has made applications on behalf of 60, I think he said 63 constituents for grants from Mayaro. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the information that I have from the ministry is that there were 8 referrals from the member for Mayaro for grants. 8. He claimed it was 60, over 60. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, of the 8 that he asked about, 1 benefited because they had completed the application. Another did not attend. The 3rd benefited. The 4th one had no proof that they had land tenure, which is necessary for the grant. The 5th one, there was no contact number for the 5th one. The 6th one got the grant. The 7th one got the grant. And the 8th one had received a grant previously. Yes, double dipping. For the entire Mayaro Rio Clara region, we have only had 19 requests. Wow. And the member for Mayaro is telling us that he made over 60 applications. And he is whom they are now looking at as leader of the United National Congress. Yeah, he's fully qualified, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, there was another where the member talked about home construction grants, which is also under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. For Rio Claro, Mayaro, total, there were 21 requests. We have disbursed 12. 3 were denied and 6 are unprocessed because documents are missing. Coming to the Parliament, the highest court in the land, and not speaking the truth, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move on now to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and what we have done over the last few years. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, for this year alone, we have delivered 496 housing units. We launched the More Ways to Pay. We have given 762 home improvement grants, 140 emergency relief grants, 217 home construction subsidies, 397 home improvement subsidies, and Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are in the process of transforming the HDC, as was said in the budget 2022-2023. May I also indicate, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the TTMF falls under the purview of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, and the TTMF has issued over 500 new loans, new mortgage loans for this year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it must be borne in mind, as the Finance Minister said in his contribution, and I quote, that the construction sector is a large employer of workers with backward linkages to suppliers and ties to the financial sector through residential mortgages. And to this end, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and the HDC and LSA in particular have been working assiduously to ensure that we achieve that goal of making sure that the housing and construction sector is one of the largest employers of workers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the transformation of the HDC was designed to achieve certain imperatives, the confluence of which we argue will radically alter the consumer's experience as it relates to home ownership. The objective of this transformation is to develop an organization that is nimble and responsive. We have, in fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, done what was proposed in the last budget, in that the HDC is now the holding company and the parent company, and there are 3 companies that are subsidiaries of the HDC, and they have very specific mandates. All the boards have been appointed to these companies, The senior management has been appointed, and the companies are in the process of filling other posts within the company. These companies are the Trinidad and Tobago HDC Asset Management Company, which is responsible for completing the sales of all housing units, and they will continue to manage and provide administrative support. There is the TTHDC Construction Company Limited, which will manage all elements of the HDC's property management mandate, including land acquisition, urban planning, project and construction management, and other solutions to undertake construction projects. There is the 3rd subsidiary, which is the TTHDC Facilities Estate Management Company, which manages all elements of the HDC's property management mandate, including the maintenance of rental units, the administration of the management of the portfolio, and partnering with regional corporations and other entities to upkeep the community, HDC communities, and promote sustainable community development. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the objective of this transformation is to ensure that HDC communities receive a greater degree of sustainability and empowerment, and those that have to interact with the HDC receive the best service possible. We honestly believe, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that with the streamlining of operations that has been achieved by this transformation, these companies will prove to be a sterling example of what should obtain in the state sector with respect to governance, revenue generation and collection, and reduce the reliance on the national purse. Mr. Deputy Speaker, between October 1st and December 31st of this year, the government is poised to construct and deliver approximately 567 new houses spread geographically throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Some of these are construction that had stalled, and we have, because of the $1.5 billion loan guarantee that had been generated by the Minister of Finance, we have been able to restart stalled projects, and we are poised to begin new housing projects, including rentals, Mr. Deputy Speaker, which is very important because we understand that not all citizens will be able to afford a mortgage, but it is important for persons who need a housing solution to be able to get the kind of solution that best suits them. And so it is not only houses for mortgage, but we will also be doing rental units and returning the HDC to its moorings, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As you will recall, in the period 2010 to 2015, there was a change in the upper threshold of applicants for HDC houses, and also a drastic increase in the cost of the houses and in the cost of producing these units, and the HDC is returning to its moorings. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what we find of particular gratification for us as a government is that we have been able to partner with the private sector in order to produce houses for the HDC client base. And so there are approximately 600 units being constructed under the design build finance, utilizing public-private partnerships. And that is of significance to us because a few years ago, the Minister of Finance in his budget speech had indicated that the HDC needed to move more aggressively towards the public-private partnerships. And that is exactly what is taking place now. Because it must be understood, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the government cannot finance all the housing construction that is needed. And so moving to this public-private partnership is of significance. And I repeat that we have over 600 units under construction using this public-private partnership model. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you will recall that the PNM, as a government, has always said that we encourage small contractors to get into different aspects of the heights of the economy. And consequently, in terms of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, we have made it a duty to encourage small and medium-sized contractors to participate in the construction of housing units under the HDC and its subsidiary. As a result of that encouragement, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have had several units built by small and medium contractors, and we congratulate them for that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, at present, we have 110 units under construction throughout Trinidad being done by small and medium contractors. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what this has done is moved persons who have the skills, who have the capability from doing small projects to doing larger projects. So we have some people who may be given contracts to construct 1 housing unit. Some are constructing 10 housing units. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, through it all, we have encouraged the movement of small and medium contractors, and that has proved to be a very excellent program. In addition to that, these small and medium contractors utilize persons who live in the area where they are constructing the houses. So what we call the HDC local content has become very evident, and we are moving to ensure we improve the skills of small and medium contractors. So the HDC is working closely with these contractors to provide training in financial management, training in project management, and we have been assisting them in becoming OPR compliant to ensure their greater participation in the construction of houses. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is not all. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you would have heard my colleague minister, the Member of Parliament for Laventille East Morvan, who is the Minister in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, talk about quite a number of areas that are under his purview specifically. And so I am not going to touch on those areas because he did a masterful job of telling us what happens in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development in those areas. But one issue that I would like to touch on that my colleague did mention was the fact that we have been in the ministry, in HDC and its subsidiaries, digitizing the ministry and digitizing the subsidiaries of the HDC. And we are very proud of that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As a result, we have multiple payment channels for the clients of the HDC. And it means that they can use online payments. We have decentralized payments by ensuring that they can use the PayWise and SurePay solutions. We are working with the banks to enable online deposits directly to HDC's bank accounts. We are also working with streamlining repair requests so that the clients of the HDC who are rental clients, they will be able to put on their phones with a message to the HDC indicating what are the concerns that they have and what the HDC needs to repair on their behalf. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the bugbears of a number of state enterprises has been their inability to complete audits or to submit audits, and the HDC is no exception. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the HDC's auditors have only just concluded a number of years of audits because in many instances, we got what is called a qualified audit because things were not found that were claimed and money that was said to be existing was not existing. And so we had to get a number of qualified audits, Mr. Deputy Speaker. What was even more alarming was the inability of the auditors to verify the existence of housing units allegedly constructed to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars during the period 2011 to 2015, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me quote from one of the audit reports, and the auditor was KPMG. And I quote, "The corporation has not prepared a comprehensive inventory of its housing units available for sale. There is an unanalyzed sum of approximately $789 million representing costs of housing units that could not be attributed to identified or identifiable physical structures." Yes. I repeat. I'm quoting from the 2013 audit report prepared by KPMG. And I quote, "The corporation has not prepared a comprehensive inventory of its housing units available for sale. There is an unanalyzed sum of approximately $789 million representing costs of housing units that could not be attributed to identifiable physical structures. We were also unable to obtain underlying documentary support for a sample of the construction costs. Consequently, we are unable to perform audit tests to ascertain the accuracy and existence of the reported inventory." End of quote. So what this means, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that there were buildings that were allegedly constructed, but they could not find the buildings. And paid for. So KPMG. So the taxpayer paid for ghost houses. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me also...
Members, again, let's recognize these standing orders, please. Proceed, member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, again from the same audit report, and I quote, "Management has also not provided underlying documentation supporting the repayment terms of a loan payable from the National Lotteries Control Board. Consequently, we are unable to satisfy ourselves that the entire balance is appropriately classified as non-current in the statement of financial..."
Just 1 second. Again, you have approximately 2 more minutes of your initial speaking time. You have an additional 10 minutes. Care to avail?
Yes.
Proceed.
Thank you. So, as at year end, we do not know whether interest should be accrued to this so-called loan and whether covenants are applicable or the loan is secured on the assets of the corporation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the report goes on to state, and I quote, "We have been unable to obtain appropriate and sufficient evidence of the existence and valuation of $180,566,982 reported within loans receivable held at our financial institutions. Money missing, supposedly for the repayment of a loan, supposedly taken from NLCB. Imagine. Yes, so we are now trying to find out, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are now trying to find out what this was all about. But we have there is nothing on the books or otherwise that tells us where this is. If it was a loan from NLCB, whether it was a loan to NLCB. So we are investigating this. And they want to advise us on how to run the country. They want to advise us on how to run this country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if anybody takes God out of their thoughts and votes them back into government, they need licks. And God help us, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with all of this, we are now in a position where we are working assiduously with the auditors in trying to make sure that we can get these things sorted out, and also to make sure that the HDC's audits are up to date. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's one other issue that I would like to raise, one other part of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development that we find is of great value to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and that is the Housing and Village Improvement Program. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you would have seen that the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, the Minister of Finance, has allocated the sum of $100 million to this program, and we are very happy that he has done that, the Housing and Village Improvement Program. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the HVIP in total has constructed over 1,700 of these houses over the period that it started. And so for last year, we completed 468 housing units, and we are soon to commence construction of an additional 275 units. Mr. Deputy Speaker, why this program is so important to myself and the member for Laventille East, and it should be important to all members, is that it moves persons who are in a situation of squatting, who may be living in a plywood house, who may be living in squalor, from that position to at least a 2-bedroom house with indoor plumbing, with a roof over their heads, in a situation where they had been living in squalor. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we cannot tell you what this has done for people in Trinidad in particular who have moved their families to a situation where they have indoor plumbing and electricity. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me say that this is free to those who we are doing this for. All they have to contribute, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is sweat equity. All they have to contribute is sweat equity. They have to put in their labor. They get their neighbors to also help, and we put a small contractor to do these houses. And what do these houses cost? They run from $165,000, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to $175,000. And it has changed so many lives. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it does not end there. It does not end there. Apart from the house, we also are putting in infrastructure. So they have roads, and they have roads, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we are now encouraging them to learn different crafts. We're encouraging them to start small gardens. We're encouraging them to start their own market. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it has transformed the lives of thousands of citizens. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me say that this is in communities from Arima to Couva, Claxton Bay to Moruga, Diego Martin to Penal Debe, Mova, Laventil to Princestown, Dabadi O'Meara. It's in every single constituency, including Pointe-a-Pierre, Oropuch West, Chaguanas, Naparima. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is true. You wouldn't know because you don't go in your constituency.
Just the chair. Just the chair.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker,
Mr.
Deputy Speaker, it's in the constituency of Tunapuna. It is everywhere because we are firm in our view that no citizen will be left behind. We are firm in our view that everybody deserves a chance to move out of a situation that may not be able to produce the best for them, but if they are given the opportunity, they will produce the best for themselves. And that is why, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance in his budget presentation has ensured that there is a $4,000 lump sum payment to retirees, a $1 billion back pay for 37,000 public sector workers, $80 million for new police vehicles, an increase in the minimum wage, court scanners, port scanners, $60 million for the resumption of the Market Box program, $7.69 million to expand the adult literacy training, $400 million for agricultural incentives, $1,000 for the school supply and book grants per child, $20 million for a new youth development and activity center, $2.5 billion for the THA, $3.4 billion to the Ministry of Works, which will help with the infrastructure throughout Trinidad and Tobago, $100 million allocated for housing in the HVIP program. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is why I say thanks
2 more minutes, member.
to the Minister of Finance and thanks to the Minister of Planning and Development. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me say that we on this side are proud of the member for Diego Martin West, because the member for Diego Martin West has been one of the best prime ministers in Trinidad and Tobago. The member for Diego Martin West, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has had to run this country sometimes on very little, but the Minister of Finance has ensured that he has had enough to be able to keep this country going. The member for Diego Martin West, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the only Prime Minister that has ever had to run a country in a pandemic. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is why the Minister of Finance can say that we are moving out of the doldrums of that pandemic and moving ahead in Trinidad and Tobago. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, without anyone who can contradict us, I say thank you to the member for Diego Martin West and ensuring that the member for Diego Martin Northeast, the member for Arima, can ensure that today we have a budget that we on this side are all proud of. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, with those words, thank you very much.
I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister, MP for Diego Martin West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to begin my short contribution by acknowledging the sterling work done by the staff at the Ministry of Finance and the associates of the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Finance of Trinidad and Tobago for an outstanding job in managing our very difficult affairs and ensuring that when we report to the population, that any reasonable person would have a clear idea as to whither goes Trinidad and Tobago and have a good view of our circumstances, both local and in our international location. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have been in this Parliament for decades, and I understand the difficulty of being in opposition, because I've served in opposition for 3 terms, 1987 to 95, 90 to 91, 1995 to 2001, and 2010 to 2013. So I've served, 2015, I've served 3 terms in opposition. So I understand the difficulty in treating in a situation where you are in pretty permanent bias and you express your views on what is happening with the government. And persons who get your views must understand that those views are really views of a person in conflict. My colleague from Siparia, who led the response to the budget. And what surprised me was the position taken by the opposition leader, who has a penchant for being personal on matters of nationalism. Always personal, always denigrating at the personal level. Always pull down, always attack at the personal level. And here it is, we had one of the best budgets presented in a difficult situation, a budget that brings hope and promise to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And the opposition leader started out her response by saying that Brian Manning and Faris Al-Rawi, because of their comfortable upbringing, cannot speak to and about the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I find that a ridiculous statement coming from the opposition leader, trying to separate 2 of my colleagues on the basis that Brian Manning grew up in a house with food and a father with a job, and Faris Al-Rawi is in somehow a comfortable family with a wife who has a family that is wealthy. And as far as she is concerned, the member for Siparia, that disqualifies them from speaking about poor people in Trinidad and Tobago. What a ridiculous state of affairs. And that was the opening gambit of the opposition leader. I would like to say to my colleague from Siparia, spend some time on your own, coming up with your own views on matters of this country, and stop coming to the Parliament and reading foolishness that others give you to read. So here it is, we had a budget debate, and we are waiting to respond because we've been in the government for 8 years. And you can hold us accountable, and we're ready for that. But all we got, Madam Speaker, is a rehash and promises to return to failed programs. And that has been our colleagues' management response to offerings throughout our term as government. Oh, laptop, 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 laptop. Forgetting that that program has been discredited as a bad program. Comfort Patrol, Comfort Patrol, Comfort Patrol, where, what's Comfort Patrol? A failed program where you spend $200 million hiring private security people to pick up Tom, Dick, and Harry, unscreened, put them in a car to drive through neighborhoods. And you call that Comfort Patrol. As a matter of fact, I was more frightened of them, because I didn't know who they were, whether they were bandits or priests, just driving through the neighborhood, put on a white T-shirt in a private car, and driving around in this kind of climate. And that was their idea of Comfort Patrol. And when we came into government, we discovered that they were paying $200 million a year for that. and they say that is their idea of bringing comfort, safety, and security to communities. Failed. Then, of course, we had the rotating of office. They have been on my case every day to rotate the Minister of Finance, rotate him. They had Minister of National Security, sorry. They had 7 of those ministers. That is not how we run the country. We believe in stability and performance. When you know the job, you do the job. So because you had 7 national security ministers, don't insist that we must do the same thing too. We have a different approach. It's the same thing, Madam Speaker, where because we know that stability has great value in this kind, especially in these circumstances, that I, as Prime Minister, have always used a more senior minister of government to be Deputy Prime Minister when I'm out of the country. Their approach was to put every single member of the cabinet as acting Prime Minister when they were in office, making a mockery of the importance of the management of the people's affairs. So every time their Prime Minister left the country, she put the Prime Minister's office in the hands of another member of the cabinet. Good idea, yes, from Naparima. Good idea. Huh? I expect nothing else from him. Right? So as far as they're concerned, and you could imagine, Madam Speaker, if they were in office in this period of difficulty playing the fool with the office of Prime Minister like that, huh? Where every single person in the cabinet every Monday morning is a different person. And that was to create confusion. So you get the result that you just heard from my colleague from Aruka Maloney, where they do all manner of evil and they have a cobweb, everything wrapped in a cobweb, don't know what they've done, is when KPMG come after to put in a report from the HDC that $700 million of housing cannot be found, and loan from NCB taken but cannot be found, and they have the gall to come in here and want to lecture me. Keep your advice to yourself. And they have no shame, Madam Speaker, because if I was sitting over there and the government was reading about that, about my tenure, I would have hung my head in shame. They have no shame, you know, because they take no responsibility. They take no responsibility for what they have done. They believe they do God's service, and they believe that they will never be held accountable. That's why they behave like that. Any government facing that qualified accounts report, where that taxpayer money is being described in that way, at least you should at least humble yourself. But no, Naparima, in your face, shouting across as though there's something to be proud of, and telling us that they want to go back to the glory days of the UNC. That's what they say. But if the people of Trinidad and Tobago want to put God out their thoughts and put them back into office, you're all welcome to do that. I could not believe it, Madam Speaker. They're going to rebuild Caroni Limited. They're going to reopen the refinery. They're going to destroy the Revenue Authority. And of course, they want no part of property tax. So we know what the opposition position is. Rehash and promise to return to the things that have no good for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That's what it is. And of course, the Minister of Finance provided the nation not just with old talk, but a series of statistical outcomes of our stewardship. They have another habit. If the outcome is one that shows that we didn't do well, then the source is good. If the outcome is one that shows that something went well, the source is to be questioned. And of course, as a throwaway, my colleague from Sipari, the opposition leader, did mention en passant the whole question of the National Statistical Institute as something that is missing. Well, I was glad to hear that. You know why? Because the reason why we do not have a National Statistical Institute after all the work that has been done is because it requires a special majority to be passed. And they said up front that they're not supporting it. I take it that what she has said in the budget debate means that they have a change of position, and therefore, I will instruct the leader of government business in the term that we are in now, that we will bring that legislation to the parliament. And I'm advising the population to observe the behavior of the opposition, and I trust that they support it with their vote, because it requires their vote to be brought into being. So I'm putting them on notice now. I'm putting all of them on notice now that we are going to put that bill on the floor. We're going to debate it here and take it to a vote. And if they vote for it, then we will have a National Statistical Institute. Right? And Madam Speaker, I would like to speak without being disturbed by that instrument from Naparima.
Prime Minister. Member for Naparima, I remind you of Standing Order 47. If you wish to invoke it, there's a particular way. I'll also remind you about the announcement that was made yesterday. Let's please continue in that vein. Please observe Standing Order 53. This is not a two-way conversation. Prime Minister.
So, Madam Speaker, we can look forward to that, right? But, Madam Speaker, the aspirant...
Prime Minister.
Sorry.
Member for Naparima. Member, I don't want to know anything. Member for Naparima. Oropuch West. I think you know much better. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would appeal to you that these disturbances, which are wholly unnecessary, I hope I get injury time for them, right? Because I really need to talk to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. So we are to look forward to the coming of the National Statistical Institute with the opposition support. It's ready to go, right? It's there and ready to go. They have a change of view, we proceed. But, Madam Speaker, I was saying, it was not only the member for Siparia who made ridiculous statements in this budget debate. The aspirant to replace her, yes, my friend from Mayaro, he made even more ridiculous statements. Having made his presentation on the numbers presented by the Minister of Finance, concluded that his words were that we were following the prescriptions of the IMF and we are at the door of the IMF. Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence to quote for my colleague from Naparima, for Mayaro, so that he can appreciate how ridiculous he has been. There's an article in today's papers. Today's Thursday, October 12th? Yes. Today's papers. And the headline of this article is Broad-Based Recovery in Trinidad and Tobago Economy. Governor Hillier in Central Bank's 2022 annual report. So a summary of the annual report is here published today in a daily newspaper, 48 hours after the member for Mayari invoked IMF on us. IMF, you know. Let me just take out a couple of extracts from this statement. And this is from the Governor of the Central Bank speaking to the country in the report, in the annual report. He mentions that the unemployment rate dipped to an average of 4.8%, down from 6.1%. And he pointed out that there was a surge in international food prices during that same period as well. He mentioned that monetary policy centered on managing externally generated inflation risks. He went on to say that the 2022 financial year saw a steady revival of the Trinidad and Tobago economy as business activity continued to reopen following the pandemic-induced lockdowns. That is the governor of the central bank. As I said earlier, Our colleagues on the other side have the difficulty of being in opposition, and they have some bias in their positions and so on. But this is the governor of the central bank speaking. But he has no axe to grind, he has no side in this political arena. So he's telling you, we revived, we are reviving. He goes on to say, good progress was made on all three of the plan pillars: monetary policy, fiscal stability, and internal operations during the financial year, and the ambitious set of objectives has been established for the year ahead. He added that there are good signs of a measured, broad-based recovery domestically, noting that a revival of business credit has provided support to manufacturing, construction, and distribution activities. He goes on to say, good progress was made in fortifying the information technology IT systems, moving towards energy efficiency. He went further to say, so, Madam Speaker, this is the perspective of the Governor of the Central Bank. But yet, a member of this House, with ambition dripping from lip and shoe sole, would come in here and talk about we are following IMF prescriptions. And that is against a background where I can reaffirm to the people of Trinidad and Tobago today that insofar as prescriptions have been formulated and applied in this country, as leader of the government of this country at the beginning of our tenure, I told this country that there were difficulties to be had, to be managed, and we will make our own prescriptions and apply those prescriptions as we see fit for our people, and that is what we have done. And we gave them the assurance that we will keep Trinidad and Tobago away from the doors of the IMF, and that is what we have done. However, we have been able, using our prescriptions, to maintain employment levels. IMF programs don't maintain employment levels, especially in the public sector. Not one gazetted public servant has lost his or her job in this country under this government as a policy arrangement. We were able to maintain and improve, not just maintain, improve and expand our social services support systems in this country. That's what we've done. We have not relinquished a single program that was bringing relief to the poor and the needy in this country. While we have curtailed some subsidies, we still maintain a major subsidy program in this country in the face of serious disturbance from some of them. We have reduced subsidies in a responsible way, but we still have subsidy on electricity, on water, in healthcare, and in energy, Madam Speaker. We still have $1 billion of subsidy on energy in this country. Madam Speaker, we've maintained an ongoing development program. And Madam Speaker, we have maintained a heritage fund. Yet they come here and talk about IMF. If an IMF program had come to this country, as they were predicting, every single one of these areas of activity I just mentioned would have been slashed, and they would have lost jobs, we'd have lost opportunities. I mean, who would lend you money as the lender of last resort while you are piling up money in a heritage fund? Who will do that? The day we go to the IMF, the first thing the IMF will tell you is spend from that fund. And who will not spend from a heritage fund in a pandemic where you needed to borrow $13 billion? But of course, what they're telling us, Madam Speaker, as they did, they are deniers. They are COVID-19 deniers, and they're saying that they would have spent no money and they would have done nothing about COVID except drink bush rum, white rum, and lime, punching and lime, and kill people across the board in this country because they wouldn't have spent from the Heritage Fund and they wouldn't have borrowed. These are the jokers who are in fact the alternative to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, these are the people who were spending every cent we earned and then borrowing money from the bank and putting it in the Heritage Fund. That's what they did. They are in no position to provide advice to this country on anything serious. And of course, the member for Siparia in a budget debate became an expert in human trafficking, pointing a finger at us about what we do about human trafficking. I noticed she has done something about it. Yes, moving the members around. And quoting for us something, the American Trafficking in Persons report. So our leader of the opposition is very interested and very versed in the American Trafficking in Persons report, but she has no interest in the Development Marriage report about what happened in their party, in their government, in Trinidad and Tobago. There were certain members who were in the back bench over there, still in the front bench over here promoting people who have questions to answer. Madam Speaker, we have arrangements in place to treat with reports of human trafficking, and we do so aggressively. The courts have issues to deal with, the police is on the job, and we have specialist agencies in the police service dealing with human trafficking. As a matter of fact, in Trinidad and Tobago, there are reports of that affecting people in the parliament. We await the outcome. Madam Speaker, well, of course, the opposition spends a lot of its time echoing the pain and suffering of the crime wave that we're experiencing in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, nobody in this country can say that they're happy with what is happening in our country with respect to crime, criminality, and violence in general. Comes at us from all directions, in all forms and fashion. The government has its responsibility. There are government agencies on the job, and we are continuously confronting these issues. There's no shortcut, and there's no easy solution. So, Madam Speaker, when politicians come and pretend that if they were in office, this wasn't going to happen, it's just so much hooey. But of course, when they have the opportunity to help, they should help. And we welcome their help. We're hearing that we are going to be meeting, we agree to meet after the budget. Today is the last day of the debate, and then there are 5 more days of examination of the numbers, and then the budget debate is goes to the other place. I did say publicly that after the debate, we'll take them up on their offer. But, Madam Speaker, in the budget debate, the opposition leader produced what she calls her alternative crime plan. And I did take time to go through it line by line. What is it they're offering that we are missing, and what is it we can engage in? There are some issues that we can engage in usefully, and I hope that we do. But what I did find that much of it was related to either what was already going on or the commissioner's day's work that one expects the commissioner to be engaged in. And so, I don't want to go into the details because we'll have a chance to do that later on, but clearly a number of the issues talking about, well, she did speak about an area of great experience, recommending a review of the marijuana legislation, but I can say that already, right, we do have entities, the NADAP, NPTA, and Children Authority. These are all people who are paying attention already to how marijuana is being used in our country, and if there are reviews to be had, it will come in due course. And, they normally speak as though they have information that is not available to anybody else, and therefore they are alerting the public. The opposition leader spoke interestingly about the Witness Protection Program, and did so specifically while calling the name of a child that horrible situation where the child went to, with her father to report a rape, and then within hours, having returned home, one of our citizens I'm sure nobody from Mars did that. One or more of our citizens went to their home and attempted to snuff out the family. Well, of course, the opposition leader was delighted about that. So she came here to report that had we got a witness program, had we been involved in a witness protection program, the child could have been protected. Now, Madam Speaker, once you are a lawyer, you could figure that out for me, please. The child went to report an incident of crime. Almost immediately, the criminals killed the child and the family members were damaged. What is the opposition leader saying in her criticism of the government? That we should have a program where you go into the witness protection program before you report the crime? Is that what she was saying? But they so want to play politics with the instance of crime in the country that the opposition leader came here and talked that foolishness. If the crime is not reported, then how in God's name could it become a part of the witness protection program? Witness to what? An unreported crime? So let me just go and tell you, Madam Speaker, just in case anybody in this country follows the opposition leader and believe that there's no witness protection effort being made by this country. Let me tell you what it is. We are engaged in something called the Justice Protection Program. And it's not even locally, it's international. And it's not a small program and it's not cheap. Between 2020 and 2023, in our program here in Trinidad and Tobago, we are engaged in managing 401 persons in that program, of which 145 are actual witnesses, and 256 are members of the witnesses' families, because when you're protecting the witness from the criminal, in many instances you also have to protect their families, because the criminals decide that they are not going to go before the court, there will be no witness to carry out the case to be made against them, so the family is also at risk. So we end up protecting more family members than actual witnesses. 401 people in the program, of which 256 are associates and family members. And Madam Speaker, 16% of that are non-citizens, are CARICOM citizens who we interact with in a similar way, coming from their territory to us, because they have the same problem there too. But what's the cost, Madam Speaker? What is the cost? That program is costing us, Madam Speaker, that program is costing us we allocated between 2019 and 2022. We allocated $120 million for that program. We spent $111 million. 73% of that on the actual persons, because you have to mine them in secret. 73% of that on the actual persons, and the 27% on the administration of the program. And that program is costing us about $30 million a year. About $30 million a year, 2-point-something million a month. And in the face of that, the opposition leader will come here and give the impression that if we had a protection program, as though we have none. It existed when she was Prime Minister. And this is somebody who served as Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Security Council, who knows about this. Ought to know. With an advisor. Well, let me correct that. Who ought to know about this. So when you come and tell us, here and behave like that in a budget debate, when the whole country is paying attention, your colleagues on this side paying attention, that you'll come and deal with it, that's what you come to mislead the population and to tell the world and to signal to criminals that they got the place wide open to where you want, because we have no witness protection program. $200 million worth in the last so many years, 3 or 4 years. $100 million, $120 million a year, as the case might be, because the program is growing, Madam Speaker. In the earlier period, we had 303 people in the program in the last triennium. In this triennium, it's 401. So this kind of cost is, as a matter of fact, recently, I have asked our people to tell us, look at it and tell us exactly how we are benefiting from this program, because what has happened at that cost is only about 1 murder per year being dealt with, you know. Because in this triennium, at that cost I just mentioned, only 3 murder cases were concluded, you know, with people who are involved in the program, because other people don't seem to see the urgency of it to get things done and out of the way. Drag it on, because the defense, the best defense of the people, the defendants, is delay. But while they're delaying it, the cost is running. So at 1 murder per year, one murder case per year being concluded in this kind of program, the taxpayer is taking a beating. And of course, the government has no say in speeding up any of this, because we have to stay far from it except to fund it. And I would ask my colleagues on the other side, when you go to talk about it in the context of how you know the law operates and what the government can and cannot do. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader talked about the Chief Justice talking about anxiety about crime. I don't understand why the opposition leader is quoting the Chief Justice in trying to make her case against the government. Because, Madam Speaker, the government doesn't go about talking about the judiciary and so on, because we all have our difficulties to manage. But the one thing I could tell you for sure is that the criminal element understands all of us. And they understand who is on their side, making argument for bail for murderers, blocking everything in the parliament that will give the government and its agencies a leg up or an upper hand. The criminals understand it very well. And of course, the root of our jurisprudence is innocent until proven guilty. That's the root of it. But the problem that we're having in this country is that there is great difficulty in proving this innocence. Because the process of proving the innocence is where all fall down. First, you have to find the accused. Madam Speaker, there was a time in this country where I distinctly recall as a child reading the newspapers and seeing strange faces in the papers with a sign saying, wanted. Wanted for questioning. Remember that? But we got very modernized, got very civilized. Today, you can't put anything in the papers, and I don't know why. If the police looking for somebody who they want to talk to, apparently you're offending their sensibilities. So you can't put anything asking the police want to talk to John Brown, because they have good reason to believe that John Brown has information that could help us with what we're dealing with. I want to ask the opposition today, would you agree, if it is required, to change any law in this country, to allow the police to ask the population to help them find John Brown or James Henry by a picture because they want to talk to him? Would you agree to amend the law to allow that to happen if the law needs amending? Or is it because we just decide that, oh, you can't do the people that, you can't put anybody's picture in the papers or the name, so they could go and hide after they commit the heinous murder until they come out to commit the next one, and they are protected by the system. The system. Madam Speaker, we take advice from other people who make changes to their laws. I could say no, that the laws as they exist in Trinidad and Tobago today in some of these things, those laws were designed for other people in another time with a different behavioral pattern. And unless we are prepared to make the changes required to treat with what we have to treat with today, we'll always be behind the 8 ball.
10 minutes of original.
Madam Speaker, so I look forward to meeting with the opposition to discuss matters of this nature, to see what comes out of it. But I'm not holding my breath. Madam Speaker, we have made some significant gains since we had that crime symposium. We have got a tremendous amount of support from the United States government. I see my name somewhere being criticized by at least one of my colleagues, a particular one, who shall remain nameless, that I should never have raised the fact at the UN to say that we are dealing with an intractable crime problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, how come? I went to the UN to report, to give a country report on Trinidad and Tobago. Who can report on the country of Trinidad and Tobago as leader of the country of Trinidad and Tobago and not touch on this intractable problem, which is probably the largest problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago today? But they must criticize. They must criticize. But Madam Speaker, we, together with CARICOM, we confronted this issue and made specific requests of the United States, which is the source of the equipment that people are buying up and bringing here. Madam Speaker, look at today's papers. Look at the front page of today's Guardian. I just refreshed my memory there, Madam Speaker. And the point is, tables full of heavy weapons, not handguns for personal protection, you know. We've gone past the ordinary assault weapons now. Those 50 caliber weapons, Madam Speaker, are a threat not to people or to gangs, you know. They are a threat to the state of Trinidad and Tobago. And you have to ask yourself, whose sons and daughters and nephews and boyfriends, who are these people who are bringing these things into this country and for what purpose? And they ought to have no mollycoddling from the rest of the population of Trinidad and Tobago. These are national security threats. And I want to say to my colleagues on the other side, I know you want to win the next election, but you've had tremendous success decades ago. That wouldn't bring you any success. You will do well to stand with the government in opposition to those who will harm us with those weapons. You will stand there. And you will do well to stop the nonsense talk about knocking it and emptying clip and knocking matic, because what you do when you talk that kind of thing there is to give them the impression that what they're doing is God's service and is fashionable. Madam Speaker, people in this country need to condemn those among us who could see it fit to make a life of crime. Make a life of crime and believe that the solution is to cast blame on the Prime Minister and the National Security Minister and the police and the police. Today, I want to congratulate the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Because if we didn't have a proper police service, these 35 weapons,
Prime Minister, no display, please.
These 35 weapons, that group alone, have the potential to bring about great harm to any and all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it takes the police service first to identify them, and then to apprehend them, and then to bring them to the court and to lead evidence against them. I know the police service has its shortcomings and its ragamuffins in there, but by and large, we do have, Madam Speaker, a police service that requires to be congratulated. And it is very depressing, Madam Speaker, when other arms of the state don't seem to understand what we're dealing with. So when you go and you hear about young ladies going out to a function somewhere and somebody put something in a drink, it could be your daughter, your niece, your nephew, somebody put something in a drink and the physical and emotional state is changed. They can be kidnapped, they could be raped, they could be assaulted in some way. And then you find the factory, and you find the manufacturer in the factory, and then they put him on $100,000 bail. You could not be serious, Madam Speaker. We couldn't be fighting the same fight. We couldn't be fighting the same fight. And when you find somebody with a bag of drugs, they go to the court, Madam Speaker, and they plead guilty, and they put them on a few dollars bail. The same bail, and give them time to pay. I know if I go in the Port of Spain market and thief a leg of pork or a hand-ripe fig, I could face the same bail too. We're not serious, Madam Speaker. And those of us who fight in this fight, we are damn annoyed about that. Policemen and women putting their lives on the line every day, every night to confront these armed criminals. And when you put a hand on them, they too become victims of what? Victims of our nonsense? This fight has to be a fight of the entire nation if we are going to win it. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader and her friends had nothing good to say about our attempt to bring gas into this country in a situation where our gas production and consumption has been collapsing from 4.2 BCF to 2.6 BCF. From the day I became Prime Minister, I knew that my number one job, the number one job that I had was to find a source to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago stays in the hydrocarbon business. And we started looking next door in Venezuela. Our friends on the other side who don't want nothing good for this country. Attack, 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 attack. Bad mouth, bad mouth, bad mouth, bad mouth. Lie, 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 lie. Undermine, 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 undermine. Right?
Sir.
Now, that has been,
Prime Minister,
that has been the approach.
that particular phrase, if you could kindly, it was a series, so I don't know to say a word, but the series of words.
I was simply repeating what we're living by. I withdraw that, Madam Speaker. But the bottom line is, we cannot count on our fellow citizens on the other side in a situation where our economy's life and death is at risk. And that is troublesome. We run our foreign policy, rooting it in the UN Charter. They deviate from that to go and support President Guaido, even as the United Nations Secretary General was standing with us, saying that the president of Venezuela is Nicolas Maduro. He had another president. And then had the gall to come here now asking for information on Dragon Deal. The only information I'll give you on the Dragon Deal is the one that is to be made public, because we have confidential conversations taking place, and we advise the country at every step of the way on what is advisable. These are commercial transactions, and the former Prime Minister must know that these commercial transactions carry with them a certain element of confidentiality. Because when under her term, they did the CGCL deal down in Labre, we in the opposition never knew what they had done until we came into government. We didn't even know that the AG then had a file written in red ink that the election day written in red ink, that public servants refused to agree to what the government wanted them to agree to. It's when we came into government we got to know that the terms and conditions of the contract were not made public or even anywhere. I had to send the minister to Japan in urgency to talk to the Japanese government to ask them to help us amend some of those terms of those contracts. And even though they have been amended, some still remain in force, and we're losing millions in the process. So, Madam Speaker, they must not come here and pretend that they have the country's interest at heart. It was shocking here in this parliament when we discovered that a former Prime Minister, as we sought to negotiate, did not know the government shareholding in Atlantic LNG, Train 1, Train 2, Train 3, Train 4. And as we fought using the existence and our presence in Train 1 to stay on the negotiating table, they had all kinds of undermining approaches to that. Would never support the government and the people on anything. Always coming as though they have something special, some mark to bust, when in fact, all they're concerned about is the next election. That's all they're concerned about. As a result of the negotiations that we have been involved in the last few years, I could tell you, Madam Speaker, we have successfully.
Prime Minister, original 45 minutes are now spent. You have 10 more minutes to wind up your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As a result of the continuous successful negotiations, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy could have reported of the billions of additional earnings that we have got, which we were not going to get had we not done those negotiations. We have restructured Atlantic LNG, a major development which puts us in a position, in a sustainable way, to earn better and to have a continued future. Even as we are producing at a much lower level, even as the marketplace is difficult and remains so, and you think our colleagues on the other side would start that to smile? No, that is something to undermine. Madam Speaker, in the next few weeks, I look forward to traveling to London to sign off. Yes, again. Yeah, we travel to do our business, to work. Madam Speaker, I look forward to signing off, or to see the signing off of the restructuring of Atlantic LNG that will take place in London sometime in November, and that will be the culmination of an outstanding period of work for which I want to congratulate the Minister of Energy, his advisors, the lawyers and the experts, our local and foreign legal teams who have negotiated with those international companies, Madam Speaker, and out of it has come improved arrangements for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I have no doubt, Madam Speaker, that not everybody in this country would be happy about that, because as far as some are concerned, the country has to fail for them to succeed. Madam Speaker, the PNM will make sure that this country succeeds. The opposition leader in the budget debate, having engaged none of the undisputed statistics, is asking about the refinery plan. The refinery plan, there's no refinery plan. That is pure, Madam Speaker, pure mischief. Pure mischief. Because, Madam Speaker, how many times do we have to say in this country that we faced insurmountable odds in 2018, and that the government of the duly elected government of Trinidad and Tobago took a decision to come out of the refining business?
Member for Naparima, the running commentary. I thought just now you self-disciplined and you've returned, so please.
Madam Speaker, he's trying to please the opposition leader, but he doesn't have to. Madam Speaker, we have said, and I don't know what else to say, we used to be engaged in refining oil when we had a production level in the country that could support the refinery. Our production, our ability to produce more is not there, and buying oil to refine it as we were doing was making huge losses which the country couldn't afford. It threatened to bankrupt the country and to destroy the quality of life, not only of the petrochem workers, but of all our citizens. The government took a decision that we would no longer be engaged in refining. We restructured petrochem. We now have a holding company. They spend all their time talking about, you close down petrochem, you close down petrochem. Well, if we closed down, it wouldn't be there as a holding company. There's a holding company. We created subsidiaries. Heritage, as a subsidiary, is successful in producing the oil, selling the oil, servicing the debt, and paying into the treasury billions that were not being paid before. Para is operating, providing us with a constant supply of refined fuels. We never one day, as they predicted, were short of fuel in this country. And as far as the refinery is concerned, we said from day one, the government is no longer interested in the business of refining. But if there's any person or entity who has a supply of oil and they want to use the refinery, come talk to us. A number of persons have talked to us, none of which produced anything that was useful, so the refinery remains there. What other policy exists, Madam Speaker? What other policy is there to exist? What is the opposition leader coming and asking about refinery policy? They will reopen petrochem. Well then, if that is what the country can look forward to, that's simply an alternative political position. They will restart Carnegie Limited. That's an alternative position. But I think there are enough schools in this country, and I say schools, not fools, schools. There are enough schools in this country where the average person will know that is just old talk from an opposition that will say anything and do anything to try to influence their way back into government. But on this occasion, Madam Speaker, this budget has been a balanced effort because there's a finite amount of money available. And the one thing that you'll observe, our colleagues on the other side could not point to a single area where revenue can be attained or increased. They want nothing to do with the revenue side of the budget. They are concerned only about the expenditure side, but the government doesn't have that option. We have to look at the revenues, we have to look at the expenditure, and we also have to be cognizant that even after we've borrowed, because we're running a deficit budget, even after we will borrow $5 billion, we still have a situation of a finite number of dollars. They have never pointed out once in all of them spoke, not one of them was able to say, well, okay, take $10 from this head and put it in the other head. No, just general statements. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. On the revenue side. But on the expenditure side, right, is magic. We are not magicians. We are just good managers of the business of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? So I want to ask the population to ignore the old talk, ignore the attempt to bust mark, ignore the misinformation, stay away from the history of the past that they're inviting you back to, because it ain't good, not good. And in our 9th year, Madam Speaker, I am proud to have led this team and this nation where we could say, Madam Speaker, that we are going through or have gone through a very difficult period, but we have made sensible decisions, doing what had to be done, and we are in a better position today. And I will take the advice and the information from the governor of the central bank as a description of our circumstances and ignore the dire hellhole that they describe as Trinidad and Tobago, because, Madam Speaker, what they say is not Trinidad and Tobago. That is their vision. That is their election campaign, because they've been campaigning non-stop. The only thing I have not heard in the representation made by Siparia in the budget debate is called the election. That's the only thing I haven't heard. But the election is due. But we are going to work from there, then to election day and beyond, because we are in fact concerned about the future of Trinidad and Tobago. It is because we are concerned about the future why we are having a Dragon deal to talk about, and a Laurent Manatee deal, and a Calypso deal, and a visit to London, and a visit to Australia, because we are concerned about the future of the children of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? So, Madam Speaker, if we're going to be advised, we'll be advised by those persons who are prepared to let their bias remain in the background and the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the foreground. I have not seen any of that on the other side. All I have seen is descriptions of the worst-case situation, much of it not true, and a misrepresentation of our real circumstances. Madam Speaker, we have come out of a difficult period, but we still have challenges ahead. We are making the best of our difficult situation, and we are ensuring, as far as we are able to, that no one is left behind. So on that basis, Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate the Minister of Finance, the longest-serving Minister of Finance in Trinidad and Tobago, for having taken us to a situation where the Governor of the Central Bank could describe us in that way. Old talk is cheap. Commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago requires a belief in their future. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have an analysis of contributions made by members opposite. It was painful. I really, Madam Speaker, cannot comment on anything said by any member other than the member for Siparia, because what the honourable member's colleagues did is simply regurgitate what the opposition leader said. There was no original content whatsoever. None whatsoever, Madam Speaker. And, Madam Speaker, I will try not to be uncharitable, but this is the worst response to a budget speech that I have heard in my 32 years in this Parliament. The worst. And what was intriguing was every one of them, if they have to keep their position, they had to start their contribution by saying what an excellent response to the budget. I have never heard, Madam Speaker, come on. Lord have mercy.
Minister of Finance, it appears that you're really creating a lot of excitement inside of here this morning. But members, I remind you all of Standing Order 53. I again, Member for Shogunas West, I know that you're the far end. Yes, I again remind us of the difficulties we find ourselves in that we had to speak about yesterday morning when there's excessive crosstalk. So let's please comply with Standing Order 53. And maybe Minister of Finance, you could try and control the excitement you're creating.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Respectfully, I beg to differ. They are unruly and they have no behavior. That's what's going on. Now, Madam Speaker, this budget has been universally accepted by the vast majority of the population, Madam Speaker. Universally accepted. And that is why they had nothing to say. Madam Speaker, every year when budget statements are produced, a number of documents are laid in the Parliament. One of them is the review of the economy. This is the first, Madam Speaker.
There's a rule against display. All right, please.
Yes, Madam Speaker, this is a budget document laid on the table in this Parliament. Not one of them, Madam Speaker, referred to one page in this review of the economy. That is the first time, Madam Speaker, in my 32 years in a budget debate where an opposition comprising 19 members couldn't refer to one page in the review of the economy. Not a single page. And you know why? They couldn't handle it, Madam Speaker. They couldn't handle it. Because they know. I hear talk from the other side and from their echo chamber outside that is an election budget. Madam Speaker, we have no election this year as far as I know. We have no election this year in 2023 as far as I know. Madam Speaker, the election not due until 2025. How could this be election budget? You know what it was? It was a damn good budget. That's what it was. Can't handle it. And you know, Madam Speaker, there is so much dishonest commentary in this country. I asked the Minister...
Madam Speaker, 48.4, the Minister used a particular word or phrase that is probably very unparliamentary.
Yes, it matters.
Yes.
So, Minister of Finance, the particular word in a colloquial context, I would agree, is not parliamentary. So if... So I really would not like when I am ruling for people to support me. I don't need any support. Thank you. Minister of Finance, so just withdraw that word. I appreciate your passion, but please keep your passion within parliamentary language.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me put it this way. It was an excellent budget. And that's why they have nothing to say. And that's why they say it's an election budget. They can't handle it. But there is so much dishonest commentary in this country. and it is necessary for us to continuously expose the dishonest commentary outside there. I asked the Minister of Labour, just acting on a hunch, what were the successive increases in the minimum wage over the years? And I and all, Madam Speaker, was surprised on what I learned. The People's National Movement, when we returned to office in 2001, we met a minimum wage of $7 per hour. $7 per hour. And this is what happened, Madam Speaker. In the ensuing years, in 2003, Madam Speaker, the PNM increased the minimum wage by 14% from $7 to $8. In 2005, the PNM increased the minimum wage by 12.5% to $9 per hour. In January of 2010, the People's National Movement increased the minimum wage by 39% to $12.50 per hour. Madam Speaker, the only adjustment to the minimum wage made by those opposite, and you would not believe this when you listen to the commentary outside there, the only adjustment made by those opposite, Madam Speaker, was in January 2015, when they increased the wage from $15 an hour, from $12.50 an hour to $15. We immediately after that, shortly after that, 2017, increased the minimum wage to $17.50, and this year, $20.50. So, Madam Speaker, from $7 when the PNM came back into office in 2001 per hour to $20.50, Madam Speaker, an increase of $13.50 in the minimum wage, of which the PNM was responsible for 11 out of those $13, Madam Speaker. 85% of the increase over the last 20 years, People's National Movement. But if you listen to the old talk outside there, nobody will know that. We increased the minimum wage from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12, 15, 17, 20. Is we do that on this side, this People's National Movement. And a set of old talk about is only $3, is $3 per hour. It's not $3 per month. And this is why I had to make it clear that for the lowest level, they will get an additional $500 a month in their pocket, tax-free. And for persons who work longer hours, as much as an additional $900 per hour, Madam Speaker, tax-free. Per month, $900 a month, tax-free. $900 per month, tax-free. Is we do that at this PNM?
And introduce the legislation too.
Ridiculous. And the Minimum Wages Act is a creature of the 1976 Republican Constitution promulgated by the People's National Movement. It's not them, it's we. It's we make the Minimum Wage Act. I am just fed up of the old talk outside there. They raise the minimum wage once. You raise it 6 times. And the other issue, Madam Speaker, during that very weak response to the budget, where I had to listen to things that people said, the UNC went and consulted itself. Went all over the country and consulted itself, because they hear what our UNC councillors say and what our UNC activists say. But what I heard after that regurgitation of everything that people said, no analysis, no determination as whether it made sense or not, no guidance whatsoever from the UNC as to whether they agree or disagree or they will implement. Nothing, just a recital of what they said to themselves. That is not a budget response. Weak. And Madam Speaker, when I made the point that the unemployment rate had dropped to 3.7%, immediate reaction from those opposite. Oh, where you got that number from? Not true. Usual. They can't handle good news. And as I was saying that, if they had taken the time to go on the CSO website, they would have seen that very figure published on that very day, 3.7%, one of the lowest unemployment rates in this country ever in its history. let me give you some facts, because again, there's so much dishonest commentary outside there. I asked the CSO through one of my officers to give me some details on how that unemployment rate dropped to 3.7%. Because typically, members of the don't want the population to know that we're not talking about URP and CPEP here. Let me tell you what it is, Madam Speaker. 21,400 persons entered the labor force, Madam Speaker. 21,400 persons in the period under review. A net effect of an additional 28,100 persons finding job, while 6,000 left employment. So 28,000 new jobs were created and 6,000 people left the labor force. What were these people? Small business managers and managing supervisors, 6,296 persons. Administrative professionals, 5,773 jobs. Mining and construction, 4,914 jobs. Protective services workers, 4,703 new jobs. Sales, 4,493 jobs. Painters, cleaners, related workers, 4,330 jobs. Motor vehicle drivers, 3,764 new jobs. Architects, engineers, and related professions, 3,460 new jobs. Managers, specialized managers, 3,114. Housekeeping and restaurant service workers, 2,475. Office clerks, 2,433. Secretaries and keyboard operators, 1,948 new jobs. Farmers, 1,923 new jobs in farming. Printing and packaging, 1,522 new jobs. Building caretakers, 1,403. Manufacturing laborers, 1,197 new jobs. Personal care workers, 1,131 new jobs. Secondary education teachers, 1,125 persons. Computer professionals, 1,000. That is what is going on in this country. 28,000 new jobs. Listen to the kind of jobs. Not one of them is URP and CPEP, but they don't want the population to know that. They don't want the population to know that the labor force increased by 14,600 persons under this PNM in just the last year under review. They don't want us to know that. Everything they say is just doom and gloom. You know, the other day I saw somebody trying to figure out what a naysayer is. A naysayer is a sourpuss. A prophet of doom and gloom. A sourpuss. That's a parliamentary word, I think. Sourpuss. Madam Speaker, you know, I come into a budget debate. As I said, I've been here for 32 years. You know what I expect members opposite to talk about? I'll give you a list. Banking and capital markets, international finance, macroeconomic policy, microeconomic principles, public financial management, corporate finance, corporate governance. That is what I expect a budget debate to be all about. They don't understand these concepts. And you know, Madam Speaker, I don't know who writes those foolish speeches for the leader of the opposition. I don't know who writes it. I don't know. But they don't have a clue what they're talking about. Not a clue. I remember in the budget presentation, I made the point that our country's financial buffers are strong. And I referred to 3 categories of buffers: Heritage and Stabilization Fund, foreign reserves, and foreign cash in banks. And they jump up, we don't know what you're talking about. And you know, Madam Speaker, if they would only read Standard & Poor's commentary on the government of Trinidad and Tobago, Moody's commentary, the IMF commentary, and if they would only take 2 minutes to study economic policy, they would understand that the strength of a country's buffers is contained in all of its foreign exchange deposits. Because if there were no deposits in the commercial banking sector, then they would have to look to the state to provide the cash. When commercial banks provide US dollars, they do it on the strength of the cash that they have deposited in the bank. They don't understand anything on that side, Madam Speaker. It is so disappointing having to listen to what they say, Madam Speaker. So disappointing. So disappointing. There's no intellectual content whatsoever. No analysis of anything. They just parrot nonsense. I heard the member for Princeton yesterday saying that our debt to GDP ratio is 77%. Where did the honourable member get that figure from? He pulled it out of a hat. Somebody give it to him? Totally wrong. Our debt to GDP ratio is 70%. Why is it that members opposite have to say these things? Let me go now to what the IMF have to say. Let me go now to what Standard & Poor's has to say. What Moody's has to say. What Carrie Chris has to say, Madam Speaker. Let me just read, Madam Speaker, from the most recent statement from Moody's. And what I found so interesting from the statements from Moody's, they not just looked at our financial situation, they looked at our institutional situation. And this is what Moody's had to say. The positive outlook, the one that they gave us, it reflects improved prospects that Trinidad and Tobago's fiscal consolidation momentum, triggered by energy price windfall gains, will be more sustained than projected in our baseline scenario, despite lower gas prices. You know what Moody's is saying? That notwithstanding the fact that there are lower commodity prices outside there, they expect our financial momentum, our economic momentum, the growth in our economy to continue. This is just a few months ago. This is what Moody's said. A sustained return to economic expansion would also enhance economic resiliency, as would continue diversification efforts in the non-energy sector. And you see, they run from that, you know. They don't like to hear it, Madam Speaker. They don't like to hear that in several sectors in the manufacturing industry there has been growth of up to 20%, Madam Speaker. They don't like to hear that. I was going through this same review of the economy that they're afraid to look at. They don't want to look at it. You know, when you go back into the appendices, Madam Speaker, and I will go to the appendix that deals with gross domestic product, and I look at our GDP in 2019, and it's here on page 197 of the review of the economy, the book they didn't want to look at. And on that page, you see that our GDP in 2019, pre-COVID, was $160 billion. $160 billion. Our GDP in 2022 was $202 billion, Madam Speaker. When I was in school, $202 billion was always more than $160 billion. Always. They don't want to hear that. Because you'll hear every one of them get up and say, the economy is contracting, we've gone through, the country collapsing. One of them say we're going back to the IMF. On the path to the IMF. How can you be on the path to the IMF if between 2019 and 2022, your GDP has grown by 25%, Madam Speaker? How? It's the nonsense I have to listen to in this Parliament. And when I go into history, Madam Speaker, and I take a look and I see what was the GDP before. So I decided to go all the way back to 2014. What was the country's GDP in 2014 when oil was $100 and gas was how much? About $10 or something like that? And production was much better than now. The GDP of the country in 2014 was $171 billion. 2014, $171 billion. Today, it's over $190 billion under this PNM government, Madam Speaker. And when you look at the data, because they can't handle the data either. As I said, they can't handle the truth. Our economy actually grew in 2019. We came in 2015 and faced multiple shocks. Multiple shocks. They enjoyed an average oil price of $100 per barrel throughout their whole 5 years. That was the average, $100. We come in and oil hits $25. And of course, the economy goes down. But it began to climb back up. If you look at what was happening, it dropped, then it went up. It almost came to zero, and then in 2019 we had growth in the economy, real economic growth. And what happened after that? COVID. And you know what bothers me with all of these honorable members over there? It's as if they were not here when COVID was around. It never happened. It never happened when you had supply chain problems, when the cost of shipping went from $2,000 a container to $20,000. When you had to shut down the whole country. They were not here when all of that was happening. When the advanced economies declined by 11%, Madam Speaker. When inflation in the advanced economies hit 10% and 11%, they were not around. When I remember seeing these pictures of Italy, coffins lining up, country shut down, people locking their homes, as if they were not in Trinidad and Tobago when this was happening. So we had already turned the economy around by 2019, and it was on a growth path. COVID hit us, but we are resilient. We are a resilient party. That is why our symbol is the Balize. Cut it down and it will grow again. Cut it down and it will grow again. So COVID knock us down and we come back again. Come back again. And if you read what Standard & Poor's says and what Moody's says and what the IMF says, they have confirmed that our economy returned to real growth in 2022 and continues to grow in 2023. That is what hurting them. That is what hurting them. And that is why we could have such a good budget. Because we as a government decided this was a time not to impose any hardship on the population. We have had some difficult years for the last 8 years. It hasn't been easy. Money has been tight. Things have been difficult. And we decided this time we will focus on the poor and vulnerable. That is why we increased the minimum wage. That is why we decided to give a grant for school supplies, and they can't even read. As a matter of fact, I will commend the adult literacy course to all of them. To all of them. We have a substantial element in the budget for adult literacy. Sign up one time. Because we did not say it was a book grant. We said it was a school supplies grant. And school supplies means stationery, book bag, uniform, shoes. That's what it means. Books as well, yes. So we gave the $3 increase in the minimum wage, as I said, between $500 and $900 a month. Additional disposable income in people at the lowest end of the income spectrum. 200,000 people we're talking about going to get that level of help. And then we gave a $1,000 school supplies grant. But there's so much more in this. There's so much more in this budget. And what I found interesting about this budget, when we finish it and we deliver it, there is so much in there for so many different interest groups. When I was reading the commentary, because you have to ignore the biased ones. They're watching the economy growing and they say declining. We have that in this country. They're watching things going on. They know employment is improving. They know that the country is getting better, but country going through. You have to kind of turn the page when you see that foolishness. And then you read and you will see the $400 million allocation we have made for agriculture. You see farmers groups coming forward and say, yes, you're doing something good. You see the allocation for financial literacy. You see another group come through and say, yes, now you're doing something. You see the tax allowance for donations to schools. They say, yes, another set of groups coming through and saying, yes, you know what you're doing. And right through this budget, Madam Speaker, right through from beginning to end, there are so many things inside of here. Money for training programs, money for green markets, money for our youth in particular. There's a lot of focus on youth in this budget, Madam Speaker, and you'd see group after group coming through and identifying themselves with one or other of the budget measures. And that is why I knew it was such a good budget. And I'm sorry I can't use the word I wanted to use. But moving on from all of that, Madam Speaker, the political leader and Prime Minister read from what the central bank said, so I don't need to repeat that. But, Madam Speaker, there's some other things that have to be said. They have to be said. When we look at what this government has been able to do, and you see it hurts them, you know. All those hospitals that we have built, it's hurting them. It's hurting them. You know, I made the point that there is nothing of substance in Trinidad and Tobago that is not a product of the People's National Movement. There's nothing. Look, today I made the point, the Minimum Wages Act is a creation of the People's National Movement. The government assistance for tuition expenses, free tertiary education, a creation of the People's National Movement. The chronic disease assistance program, CDAP, millions of dollars now being given to people in free medication, a creature of the People's National Movement. The St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies, People's National Movement. The University of Trinidad and Tobago, People's National Movement. There is nothing, no program, no institution, nothing of substance in this country that has not been initiated, developed, and nurtured by the People's National Movement. When I look at their period in government, what have they got to show for it? What? A half-finished highway that where $1 billion just went up in smoke? $1 billion lost on some corrupt Beetham wastewater plant? That is what their legacy is, Madam Speaker. What do they have to show for the 5 years that they were in government? They have nothing to show. Nothing. And you know what is bothering them? You know what is bothering them, Madam Speaker? As I said, there are no election in 2023 unless the Prime Minister has something in his back pocket that I don't know about. Might have a next budget to come in. That might kill them. Because if this is causing so much pain and diarrhea, if this is causing so much pain and gastrointestinal distress, what's going to happen in the next budget? What? You know, so, Madam Speaker, you know, if you look at every metric, you know, I was so disappointed. There's nothing to answer. They don't even understand what a current account surplus is. We have been posting current account surpluses now since we emerged from COVID. You know what a current account surplus is, Madam Speaker? It means that your exports exceed your imports. We are one of the few countries in the region, one of the few countries in the whole hemisphere that run a current account surplus. Our exports exceed our imports. They don't even understand what that means. It's too much for them. It's way above their head. We are the only country in the Caribbean with an investment grade rating. They don't understand what that means. It's too high for them. The only one with an investment grade rating. They don't understand. It's too much for them. Madam Speaker, you know, to tell you the level of intellectual bankruptcy on that side, they don't even understand the concept of a sovereign spread in terms of financing. I tell you, there is nothing, no content whatsoever from that side. We went to the capital market, Madam Speaker, just a little while ago, and we achieved a spread of 170 basis points. Well, they don't even know what a basis point is. They don't know what a basis point is. But I will educate them. I will educate them. There are 100 basis points in a percentage. So that our spread is 170 basis points. It means that when we go to borrow, we pay 1.7%, or 170 basis points. above the safest investment in the world, which is US Treasury notes. And US Treasury notes fluctuate. US Treasury notes were below 1% in 2019-2020, Madam Speaker. Below 1%. They've begun to systematically increase 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, all because the Federal Reserve in the United States has to contain inflation by increasing interest rates. So interest rates are increasing throughout the world because the Federal Reserve is the benchmark for the world. So we go to borrow. We always will be above the rate of US Treasury notes, always. There's no country in the world that can borrow below the rate of US Treasury notes. So when the rate is 2% or 3% or 4%, you get a spread on top of that. So we went to market, Madam Speaker, got a spread of 1.7%, borrowed at 5.95%, 550 million US to refinance a loan they had taken out some time ago. And another Caribbean country, Dominican Republic, went to the market the next week. We borrowed at 5.9%. They had to borrow at 11%. But they wouldn't understand that. It's too high for them. You see, they come and they say, oh, you don't know what you're doing. You can't borrow at a proper rate. They don't understand anything on that side, Madam Speaker. The average spread among countries of the LATAM region is 3%. All of the other countries of the LATAM region have to borrow at 3% above Treasury rates. We borrowing at 1.7%. You know why? You know why? Because one of the things I had to do, Madam Speaker, in order to raise that 550 million US dollars, which was oversubscribed, by the way, 3 times, with high-quality investors, I had to do a roadshow. So we had to present Trinidad and Tobago. You had to present the whole Trinidad and Tobago economy. You have to present the government of Trinidad and Tobago. You have to present our achievements over the last several years. You have to present the performance of the economy in 2022. You have to give them projections for 2023 and 2024. And you have to produce a rating from Standard & Poor's and Moody's. You do all that. And having done all of that, and we presented to almost 100 investors, you then get a sovereign spread that is half the rest of Latin America. It shows that the rest of the world has confidence in Trinidad and Tobago. And you see, Prime Minister made a point. When the external rating agencies say that things are not going good, it's correct. When the external agencies say Trinidad and Tobago is doing well and the government is doing a good job, they say the IMF is a PNM party group and Moody's sell out. And we pay S&P to write that. That is their behavior, Madam Speaker. That is their behavior. But this budget has something for everyone in it. And there's a deep vision in this budget which is too deep for them. They don't understand. We have been in an economic situation where we've had to contract spending. We came in, they had taken government expenditure from $45 billion to $60 billion without any commensurate increase in revenue. It is the most reckless economic approach to government I've ever seen anywhere else. And Madam Speaker, if they get back inside, you know what they will do? They will take our debt to GDP ratio to 150%. That is what they will do. They will spend like you're going mad. They will borrow like you're going mad. They will destroy all our ratings because they don't care. They don't care, because with them, it's all about awarding contracts. You heard the Minister of Planning, Minister of Housing make the point that the auditors cannot find houses for which money was spent to the tune of $700 million. I find that is amazing. So under the UNC, $700 million was spent on houses, but you can't find the houses.
Ghost houses.
I've never heard of ghost houses, you know. Never heard of ghost houses. Sorry, the Prime Minister has corrected me. Nothing, the money wasn't spent. It was paid. It wasn't necessarily spent. And you see, if they come back into power, that's what will happen. That is what will happen. They will just borrow like they're mad. They will destroy every rating that we have. and they will pay people money. That's what they will do. They will pay people money. And we're not talking about your ordinary Joe, you know. We're not talking about the citizen, you know. We're talking about the people like the guy who was happy to receive $900 million for some rusting junk on the bottom, and then he runs away to Panama. That is their legacy. That is their legacy. That is their legacy. They take out a clause in the contract for the Point 14 highway. They rescue a contractor that was bankrupt. There are clause in the contract that says if the contractor is bankrupt, you can terminate immediately. A week before election, they take that out. Allow the Friday, I'm sorry, a couple of days before. That is their legacy, Madam Speaker. But yeah, this, I am not afraid, Madam Speaker. No matter what they say, no matter how they scream, I am confident that we have heard all of this before. I have been in this parliament. You have been in this parliament too, Madam Speaker. And all of this talk, this set of old talk from their side, shouting and screaming. I have heard this before. I heard it in 2019. I heard it in 2020. That we're coming back into power soon. You know. And what happened in 2020, Madam Speaker? They lost the election. They get a curtail again. They never expected that. And as the Prime Minister said, opposition is not a nice place to be. It's not a nice place to be, especially when, Madam Speaker, there's a running commentary from Appropriation. It's really ridiculous.
Ask him where the 700 million in houses.
Appropriation, Baratara, I'd ask you all to please oblige and comply with Standing Order 53. All right? I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to comment sometime. Yes. Minister Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, as soon as you told them that, they start to mumble again. But I know why, you know. Madam Speaker, I don't need to prove anything.
No, so let's go on. Come on, Minister of Finance, please.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Perhaps you could go and find out where that $700 million went.
Correct.
Yes, do that. Madam Speaker, I'll tell you why they have no answer to this budget. I'll tell you why they couldn't go through the review of the economy. They couldn't do any economic analysis. They couldn't make any suggestions on the revenue side. I'll tell you why. You know why? Because there is so much inside of here. Look at this on page 110 of the budget. Throughout our network of communities, sporting disciplines, including cricket, football, netball, and where available, aquatics, generally take place at varying levels of involvement. We propose to boost these activities further and inculcate them into our community's fabric. I have therefore allocated a total of $39 million in 2024 for the fostering and promotion of community sports. That hurting them. That hurting them, Madam Speaker. Then we go to the fact that we are allocating $19.5 million to administer a community arts and crafts initiative in community centers throughout Trinidad in 2024. That hurting them as well, Madam Speaker. The fact that we are returning to the market box program, which serves a dual purpose. It gives needy families fresh produce and fresh meat, plus backward linkages to the agricultural sector, boosting agricultural production. They can't handle that, Madam Speaker. The farmers are looking forward to that, Madam Speaker. They can't handle it. They can't handle the fact that we have touched so many areas in this budget. As we go through what we are doing in digitization, as what we are going to do in housing. They can't handle the Minister of Energy neither, Madam Speaker. They can't handle him because they know that because of all the work being done by the Minister of Energy and the Prime Minister, we have grasped the nettle. We have dealt with the problem squarely. We came into government and we found that they had done nothing to ensure our energy security. Absolutely nothing. They could say what they want. They had done nothing. And over the last 8 years, Madam Speaker, these two honorable gentlemen, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy, have gone throughout the capitals of the world, have gone to our neighbor across the Gulf of Paria, have gone to Washington, and have secured energy future for our children and our grandchildren, Madam Speaker. And the dividends will reach us very soon. Madam Speaker, let me just deal with some of the points made by the Leader of the Opposition. Apart from all the bogus statistics, which I can't be bothered to repeat, because they know that the economy is growing, the Leader of the Opposition went back again to the closure of Petrotrin, went back to the mythology, got a video done by some fisherman or somebody associated with fishermen. I don't know why the gentleman don't just stay with fish. People should stay in their section and not tread into areas about which I'm now being told he's a cloth man, not a fish man. But people should stay in their section doing some silly video about Petrotrin. Let me tell you what the facts are about Petrotrin. Petrotrin was operating at a loss for years. The company was a drain on the treasury. Overburdened with debt, the net debt at financial year end 2015 amounted to $11.4 billion. That was Petrotrin's debt at the end of 2015, $11.4 billion. Not 2010, 2015. Taxes and royalties owed to the government, and this is the part that they run away from, taxes and royalties owed to the government by Petrotrin amounted to $3.1 billion as at February 28, 2017. The company was not complying with the tax laws, and even when Petrotrin collected taxes from companies that paid their taxes to Petrotrin for onward transmission to the Ministry of Finance, Petrotrin was keeping the money and utilizing the money for its own operations. Left as it was, Madam Speaker, the financial analysis we did in the Ministry of Finance, that if we had left Petrotrin alone, it would have required a cash injection of $25 billion just to stay afloat. $25 billion. And you see that when the accounts came in at the closure of the refinery operations, Petrotrin had to report a loss of $18 billion. $18 billion, Madam Speaker. So you have a company not paying its taxes, owes the government $3.1 billion. I remember as Minister of Finance in that difficult period, 2016, 2017, when oil was at $25, calling on Petrotrin to pay its taxes, and they said they can't pay. They can't pay. And Petrotrin also owes $400 million in short-term debt, another $3 billion.
Buying crude.
Guaranteed by the government. And they borrowed that money, that $3 billion, to buy oil and then refine the oil at a loss of sometimes as much as $8 per barrel. That was Petrotrin. It was insolvent. It was bankrupt. It was a drain on the treasury. The refinery was losing $2 billion a year. And yet, people still pretend that this was one of the crown jewels.
Correct.
A complete pretense. If any serious person goes and looks at Petrotrin's financial statements, you will see the tremendous losses incurred by the organization. And now we have Heritage Petroleum making $1 billion profit. And they don't understand that either. They don't understand. Oh, they say, oh, that is the old oil production arm of Petrotrin. Nonsense. Petrotrin was overstaffed. Petrotrin had 5,000 workers when it needed maybe about 1,500 at most. Heritage is now running with what, less than 1,000? About 800. And that is why Heritage can now report profits of billions of dollars. It can pay taxes and royalties. It can pay taxes to the treasury of billions of dollars, Madam Speaker.
Yeah. Minister of Finance, your original 45 minutes are now spent. You are entitled to 10 more minutes to wind up your presentation, if you so need.
Yes, ma'am.
Please continue.
Speaker, I just can't understand. You know what the facts are. You know that Petrotrin was hiding its accumulated losses in the refinery. You know that they had debt of $12 billion. You know that the refinery was bleeding $2 billion a year. You know that Petrotrin wasn't paying its taxes in the billions. And yet you still put up this Nancy story about Petrotrin was a cash cow and it was the crown jewel. Why? The facts are there in black and white for anybody to see. And as I said, getting some fisherman to make a fool of himself with some video. Madam Speaker, there's another thing I would like to deal with. And you know, the leader of our party, the Prime Minister, made the point that they always get personal. They want to attack people that they think are close to the government. There's a section in the budget address response from the leader about how we are favoring large pharmaceutical importers with foreign exchange. Sorry, I can't use unparliamentary words. But I asked the Exim Bank to give me the facts. And this is the information I've received from the Exim Bank. In terms of the way that the Exim Bank has distributed foreign exchange to the business community, of the total amount of forex that they have given out since we started the facility, somewhere in the vicinity of about $1.5 billion US. They gave it to 158 manufacturing companies and 97 importers. But of all of that, Madam Speaker, what I find interesting is that when you look at the foreign exchange given by the Exim Bank to small and medium enterprises, it comprises 84% of the companies who receive forex from the Exim Bank. So 84% of that total that I just read out there for you, the 197 or so, let me get the correct figure, 158 companies that receive foreign exchange from the Exim Bank, 84% of that 150 number are small and medium enterprises. Only 16% are large. And when you look at the quantum, 58% of that 1.5 billion was given to small and medium enterprises. But if you listen to them, you would think everything is going to financiers of the PNM. And then if you go to pharmaceuticals in particular, because they get very personal and very nasty, there are 7 pharmaceutical companies that access foreign exchange from the Exim Bank. 7, not 1. Of these 7 pharmaceutical companies, 2 are large, 2 are medium, and 3 are small, Madam Speaker. And in the pharmaceutical area, where money is given, foreign exchange is given to importers, 32% of that is given to small and medium enterprises, Madam Speaker. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. So you have over 250 companies getting foreign exchange from the Exim Bank. And I want to congratulate the CEO of the Exim Bank, Mr. Dukaran, and his staff and the board of Exim Bank. That Exim Bank window has been a tremendous success. And when you look, Madam Speaker, at the results, what we are seeing is that the companies that are getting foreign exchange from the Exim Bank are now repatriating more foreign exchange than they're being given by the Exim Bank. And that is the reason why our exports are growing by 15% and 20% and 30%. These are all facts. That is why at the beginning of this presentation, Madam Speaker, I could read out all of these new jobs. Jobs in small business, mining and construction, motor vehicle, retail, manufacturing, and so on. That's why I could read out 28,000 new jobs in the last period under review by the Central Statistical Office. That's just for the first 6 months of 2023, by the way. That 28,000 new jobs created under this PNM government is just for a 6-month period in 2023. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. When you listen to them, you know, Madam Speaker, I think I better read it out again, you know. How much more time I have?
And at 2:15:17.
Thank you very much. I think I better read it out again. It's very important that the public knows the truth. This PNM government has created 28,000 new jobs in the last 6 months. 28,000 new jobs. 6,000 in small business. 5,000 administrative professionals. 4,900 mining and construction workers. 4,700 protective services workers. 4,000 sales and service, 4,493 sales and service workers, 4,330 painters and cleaners, 3,700 motor vehicle drivers. Now, why would 3,700 motor vehicle drivers get work unless the economy was growing, Madam Speaker? Were they just driving around? Clearly, these are goods vehicles. These are people transporting goods across the country from our booming manufacturing sector. Housekeeping and restaurant service workers, 2,475. Clerks, 2,433. Secretaries and keyboard operators, 1,948. Farmers, I'm very pleased to see this number, 1,923 new farmers in the first 6 months of 2023. You know, what is it you say? You don't miss the water until the well runs dry. You know, Madam Speaker, I have confidence in the population of this country. They have given us a mandate in 2015, and despite surviving the catastrophe of COVID, or despite the population suffering under the catastrophe that was COVID, they gave us another mandate in 2020. And as I said, I've heard this all before. I heard all this old talk in 2019 and 2020 about how the end of the PNM is near and all you're going out of government just now and we coming back. I heard that in 2019 and 2020. But the population didn't buy it. They didn't buy the old talk from the other side. And I'm hearing it again. But I know, Madam Speaker, that this country is emerging from the difficult place it was in. I know that this government has a vision. I know that every minister is working for the service of the population of Trinidad and Tobago. And as a result, when you get the next budget, if there is another one, that will be an election budget that will blow your mind. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Finance, I believe you had to move. Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2024 be now read a second time. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Titled An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2024.
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In accordance with Standing Order 81.8, I beg to move that the Appropriation Financial Year 2024 Bill 2023 be referred to the Standing Finance Committee for the consideration of the bill together with the estimates.
Honourable members, the House shall now go into Standing Finance Committee to consider the bill and the estimates. Honourable members, in accordance with Standing Orders 81.2 and 8, the estimates containing the details of the financial requirements along with the appropriation bill have been referred to this committee for consideration. The documents before the committee therefore include the draft estimates details of estimates of recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2024, which identifies 1. The heads of expenditure, 2. The chart of accounts for expenditure, 3. The classification of expenditure sub-items under the personnel expenditure, goods and services, and minor equipment purchases subheads. 4. The summary of the total allocation to each head of expenditure. 5. The sub-item details relevant to each head of expenditure for the current fiscal year and the 2 fiscal years immediately preceding. The draft estimates of the revenue and expenditure of the statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly for the financial year 2024, which identifies 1. The statutory board or body for each head of expenditure, 2. The abstract of estimated revenue and expenditure for the year ending 30th of September 2024, 3. The abstract showing the government subvention for 2022 actual expenditure, 2023 estimates, 2023 revised estimates, 2024 estimates, and the increase or decrease of the 2024 estimates over or under the 2023 revised estimates. 4. The chart of accounts for income and expenditure. 5. The classification of expenditure sub-items under the personal expenditure, goods and services, and minor equipment purchases subheads. 6. The sub-item details relevant to each statutory board or body for the current fiscal year and the 2 fiscal years immediately preceding. The draft estimates of development program for the financial year 2024, which includes 1. The summary of estimates of the development program for the financial year 2024 for Part A, the Consolidated Fund. 2. The summary of the total allocation to each head of expenditure for subhead 09, Development Program Consolidated Fund. 3. The item, sub-item, project group, and project description details relevant to each head of expenditure for the current fiscal year and the 2 fiscal years immediately preceding. 4. The summary of estimates of Part B, the Infrastructure Development Fund for the financial year 2024. 5. The summary of the total allocation to each head of expenditure for head 701, Infrastructure Development Fund. 6. The item, sub-item, project group, and project description details relevant to each head of expenditure for the current fiscal year and the 2 fiscal years immediately preceding. The Appropriation Financial Year 2024 Bill 2023. The bill provides for the service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2024. The bill seeks to authorize a sum of $50,745,215,991 from the Consolidated Fund. The schedule details the sum to be approved for each head of expenditure. In accordance with Standing Order 85-1, the consideration of the clauses of the bill will be postponed until after the consideration of the schedule, which lists the heads of expenditure to be approved. The heads will be considered in the order submitted by the Leader of the Opposition. Proposed work schedule. Honorable members, there are 41 heads of expenditure to be considered over a 5-day period. Therefore, I propose that the committee meets each day from 10 a.m. to consider a minimum of 8 heads of expenditure per day. Consideration of the Tobago House of Assembly. Honorable members, I crave your indulgence to have the committee agree on the time for the examination of the Tobago House of Assembly and Central Administrative Services Tobago on day 4 on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, in order to allow these representatives to make arrangements to travel to Trinidad. May I suggest that given the order submitted by the Leader of the Opposition, the Tobago House of Assembly and Central Administrative Services Tobago be examined in consecutive order commencing at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. Speaking time. Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 45.1, the speaking time in Standing Finance Committee shall not exceed 5 minutes on each intervention. Each minister will be invited to make a brief 5-minute opening statement on the ministry or department's priority areas for the upcoming year. Procedure for each head. Honorable members, the procedure for each head of expenditure shall be as follows. 1. The head and the amount to be appropriated will be announced by me as chair. The minister will then be invited to make a brief opening statement. 3. The chairman will then propose the question that the sum proposed stand part of the schedule. 4. For each head of expenditure, the chairman will call the subhead, followed by the item. The chairman will not call the sub-item. Discussions can ensue on the item called or the relevant sub-item and clarification sought. Once the committee moves to another subhead, questions from a previous subhead will not be entertained. 5. The chairman will repeat the procedure for the development program. 6. Once this is concluded, the chairman will then put the question that the sums stand part of the schedule. 7. The procedure will be repeated for each head of expenditure. Any other business? Is there anything that any member may wish to raise? And that being the case, honorable members, the meeting of the Standing Finance Committee is suspended and will resume on Friday, October 13th, 2023 at 10 a.m.